Live now. All right, I think we're live.
Yeah. So, hold on. Let me catch my breath. There's a wasp downstairs, and we're trying to get rid of it. So, whew. We've been running around. Oh. Okay.
Wait, are we live actually? Can people hear?
Yeah, we are. I'm just going to mute myself. It's muted, and we are good. And
Susanna's here saying, "What up, Jihad
BBs?
Oh, that's funny.
Okay. Jihad BBs.
And oh yeah, we have Brian here. We have Moose here. Moose is going to be on your side of this, by the way. I know that.
Huh?
We have Ulrich here. Oh, I think he's going to be on my side. Interesting topic. My take. So okay, well, we're going to read this later. But guys, your audio is good, right?
Yes.
Kez is here. KCA is here. That's awesome.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to our end of month episode. This is end of month for June of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. We usually have a Q&A for these things, but today what we're doing is because there's been so much talk about this, and we had a previous episode that was about this. People want to talk about this, so we will, right? And we're going to talk about Black Lives Matter and ex-Muslims. So as everybody knows now, the murder of George Floyd kicked off a widespread protests, not only in the US, but also around the world. And more importantly, there's been a conversation about police brutality, systemic racism in criminal justice reform. And this doesn't just apply to the Black community, which is the focus right now, but also in other marginalized communities. And interestingly, the ex-Muslims tend to have very diverse views on this, including within this podcast. So, recently I had a conversation on my other podcast that I do called Professional Novice with Mariam Namazi, and both of us are very staunch supporters of Black Lives Matter, whereas Armin, on the other hand, has some reservations about it. And, you articulated those in the last Q&A we had last month. So what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to try to talk about it in as effective a way as possible and talk about the different positions and see where we get. Now, one thing that we've heard a lot of your feedback in terms of when we speak. Sometimes we speak against each other, not just against each other, but we speak over each other, and there are a lot of interruptions. So occasionally points get interrupted. So we're trying to, at least for the first half hour of this, we're going to try to have some kind of structure. So we're going to start with Armin asking me a few questions, which we decided I don't know the questions ahead of time, but we're going to sort of iron out points where we disagree, what our initial positions are. And then what we'll do is we'll have a 5-minute limit for each of us speaking. So we can take part of it or we can use all of it. But for the first half hour, we're going to have these blocks. During those 5 minutes, we are not allowed to interrupt each other. Let's see how that pans out. And if we have something to say, I have a pen and a piece of paper here that I'm going to write it down. Armin's also going to make notes so he can respond. So that's kind of how we're going to go about it. And it would be, again, put your comments, your thoughts in the comments. Hopefully at the end of it, in the last half hour, we're going to try to take some questions as well. So the first half hour, we're going to do this sort of try the structured format. Then after that, we're just going to make it open like we usually do. So Armin, how's it going? How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
I'm the racist one here, apparently, that you mentioned that you're the anti-racist. I'm the racist one.
God, no. Okay, so can I just say at the outset, like I don't want to do that. There is this thing that, okay, Armin's a bootlicker, Ali's a woke regressive, and there's these labels that you throw out and you put titles on, and so that's not I really don't want to do that. If you think I'm woke, I'm woke. If you think he's a bootlicker, white supremacist, fine, whatever. But what we're going to try to do is just sort of talk about it. The moment you start putting these labels on people immediately, then it becomes an issue. Do I think that some people have lost their minds? Yes, I do. Right? Is Armin one of them? I don't think, not yet completely. Well, I mean, maybe you did a long time ago, but it has nothing to do with this. So let's.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get going.
By the way, I just want to tell people that we're not giving to your pressure for not interrupting each other. Ali and I are friends, and we don't mind interrupting each other. Don't think this is a win for you guys. This is the only reason why we're not interrupting each other is because we noticed that the software that we're using kind of doesn't make it very difficult to understand what we both are saying when we do interrupt each other. Hey, there's a little bit of an echo. Do you mind reducing your volume?
It's already very low.
So what I'm going to actually mention is, like, I've seen a lot of these debates, and what I've noticed is that a lot of people just talk past each other without actually acknowledging the other side. And the first person says a whole bunch of things that are true, and the second side says a whole bunch of other things that are true. That doesn't really negate anything what the first person said, and then the first person responds to the second person again with a whole bunch of other things that are also true, but again doesn't negate anything. Like, they keep talking, both sides keep saying things that are true, but really doesn't negate the other side, right? So to avoid doing that, because if you're going to do that, we might as well just go have your own separate discussions without actually having realizing where the differences are. What I thought we should do is, I'll tell you a list of things that I think we probably agree on, and you might want to tell me if I'm right. Did we agree on these things or not? Okay, so that we don't have to. You're muted yourself, so we don't have to go and in directions that we don't need to go, because we already agree on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit of a big list, so I'm gonna try to go through it as fast as I can, right?
Yeah, so for this, there's no time. You can start this and take all the time you need, and then after that, we'll start the five.
But if you're like, I don't want us to go into too much detail on this. So I just want to get confirmation or denial of whether or not you agree with this. Okay. So first thing that we agree on is there are racist cops out there, and there are police who lie, and there are police that cover for for crimes committed by other cops. These things do happen.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, great. When it comes to non-lethal violence, there's clear, undeniable data that there is a bias against Black people by the police. This is what I
agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's what I think as well. In the by the way, these are just to be clear, these are about the United States. Okay. In the United States justice system, there is bias against Black people, and they get sentenced for the same crimes more often. They get harsher sentences for the same crimes.
I agree.
Okay, yeah, that's what I think as well. Data clearly shows that. That's undeniable. There's also more discrimination against Black people when it comes to how often Black people are stopped for the same, even if you adjust for the variable that Black people commit more crimes, even after you adjust for that, they still get stopped more often.
They do. That's right.
Okay. A lot of the fact that Black people commit more crimes in the United States more than any other demographic, it's mostly due to socioeconomic factors. But I mean, it's not what I'm saying is, like, it's nothing inherent within Black people.
I agree with that, but I wouldn't say mostly. I would say partly.
What else is there? Sorry.
I think that there is a domino effect from the history of, Jim Crow laws.
That's socioeconomics. Yeah. That's socioeconomics.
No, there's a history, political aspect. There are people who've had rough histories who haven't had socioeconomic problems, like Jews, for instance, right? But I think that's a couple more.
The socioeconomics is a very broad term that covers that as well.
Okay. If that is how you're defining it, then sure. Yeah.
Right. So one aspect of the higher crime rates is the fact that the poverty within the Black community, which is not, which is partly due to generational poverty. that comes from the past. Like the past is not irrelevant. Okay, what happened to the Black communities in the past does have an impact today. You cannot dismiss the history and the impact that it had today. So you agree with that?
Yes, and I also think it's ongoing. So I think a lot
that's
of
what I'm saying.
Ongoing. Yeah.
Yeah, there is,
not just the effects, but the biases as well.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm getting. That's what I said above already, right? The things that I said above was not about history; it was about the biases today. So I did acknowledge that. Okay. Police in the United States gets away with crime a lot of times. They are not held accountable, and this has been a case for both unjustified killings on white and Black victims.
That they get, yes, police brutality overall, both white and Black. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Research. Okay, so when it comes to research data, the data that the research is based upon, if it's coming from the police department itself, you need to be more skeptical about them, and that they need to be compared to other sources of data for that is not coming from the police itself for accuracy's sake.
That's right. And can I say one statement about this?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like if you're looking at medical errors, if you're studying that and you only look at reports written by the accused doctors themselves, you're not going to have good data. And that's actually been shown with policing as well.
Yeah, but so to make sure that this data is accurate, they need to be compared to other sources of data,
like media reports and so on. Yeah.
Media, yeah, and nonprofits that collect data like this, and right.
Yes.
Okay, where was I? Can cause bias against certain races. Okay, systemic racism can cause bias against certain race even if there is no explicit intention.
Exactly. That's the definition of systemic racism.
Okay, these are my opinions, by the way, that you're also agreeing with, right? So
yeah,
like we both agree. Okay.
This feels very different to the last conversation we had.
No, it only feels different.
I've done a lot of reading since then.
It only feels different is because people assume things about my opinions based on the things that I say. Okay.
Okay.
The police in the United States needs to be demilitarized.
Yes.
I agree.
Not de-weaponized, demilitarized.
Demilitarized. Yes, I agree. Okay. By the way, de-weaponize, some people have come up with some suggestions that I did not look into, so I do not know. But definitely demilitarize. A lot of Black people are more scared of police violence than they're scared. They're more scared of police violence compared to being scared of violent crime by other Black people.
So I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
Actually. What do you think?
Well, in terms of data, I don't know. I think it's a different kind of fear. If you're in the middle of gang violence and there's another person who you know is coming to you and there's no rules or regulations, I think that might be more scary. On the other hand, if you're encountering a police officer, there is a chance that, not all.
No, but so you don't know. Let's just clear. So you
don't. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know.
Okay. So that's something that you don't know. I think they seem to be more afraid of police violence than other form of violence. Mm-hmm. United States is one of when it comes to explicit racism, United States is one of the least racist countries in the world.
Yes, I've actually did a whole post about that based on what you said.
All right, so we agree on that. Okay.
Yeah, I think Canada is a lot less racist, and so are New Zealand and Australia. But
yeah. That's why I said. That's why I didn't say Yeah, I didn't say it's the least racist country in the world. I said it's one of the least.
One of the least. Okay? Yes, I agree.
By the way, when you actually, just to be clear, once you start looking at implicit racism and racism by outcome, United States is average. It's not one of the least racist. I'm only talking about explicit racism. Okay.
And this is actually based on. I'm not just saying this. This is based on data. There is data showing this too. Mm-hmm. It's one of the least racist.
All right, so we agree on this. The shooting, unjustified. Well, actually, both justified and unjustified shooting by police has decreased in the United States. Both the shooting of Black people and white people has decreased in the United States.
Yeah, that's what the data shows, I think, right?
Yes. So we agree on this, that it has decreased.
Yes.
And the police, the tactics and the methods used by the police in the United States has improved. Do you agree with that?
The tactics and the I think that's really broad. I would say it's improved. Like if you're talking about from the Rodney King days when everything was underground and there was no accountability, I think yes, it has. Yes.
Okay, so you agree that it has improved. Resisting arrest is generally not a good idea for either black or white people in the United States.
That's also like it's kind of loaded with things that it depends on. But yes, resisting arrest, unless you detect overt hostility, right, is not a good idea. But resisting arrest, because the thing is, you have rights in the U.S. based on, you can't be arrested based on anything. You can actually turn around and you can ask them, what am I being arrested for? And they have to tell you. They have to read you, like they have to tell you.
That is not resisting arrest, Ali.
Yeah,
asking a cop what are you being charged for is not resisting arrest.
Right, but the thing is, a lot of the resisting arrest things that you do see when they're not being lied about, right? When you do see resisting arrest, you see things where people are being arrested for things they don't know what they did and they haven't been told. So in those cases, it's your legal right to be able to ask what it is and say, okay, no.
Right. That's not what I'm asking about. But when it comes to resisting arrest, that's a bad idea.
That's a bad idea, yeah. Just overall. Right. I mean, if you're being arrested under legitimate, if it's clear cut, then yeah, sure.
Okay. So the killing of whether it's shooting or other ways, okay? So I'm not just focusing on shooting. Most of these high-profile cases is not police shootings, okay? But the general killing of unarmed black and white people by cops is rare.
Yes.
Yeah,
of course. And shootings are very rare. It's the rarest form of police intervention.
So we agree on that as well.
Yeah, okay? Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you agree that when a white person is unjustifiably killed by cops in the United States, it gets much less attention by the media in the United States than when a black person is killed unjustifiably by the police in the United States?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Do you agree that too often people in the United States assume that the explanation for some of these biases are racism without actually knowing anything showing that it's racism? Now, I'm not saying, like, we agreed, like I mentioned to you a whole bunch of things that is because of systemic, implicit racism. But do you agree that the general public, on average, their go-to explanations for any biases is racism without actually doing any research or investigation to see if that's the reason, if that's the actual reason?
No, I don't agree with that. That I don't agree. I think
you don't agree with that one?
No, I don't think that, you're putting sort of systemic racism, implicit racism, overt racism under the same bucket. But I think when people think of racism causing harm disproportionately to one community, they think of racism overall. I think they're thinking of the system being a problem. They're not just thinking of individual cops, right? They're thinking of individual cops. I think even everybody agrees that these individual cops are assholes. But overall, the ones that do it, the minority of them. But I think overall, the outrage is over the system. So
wait, so you do not think that people assume racism without actually looking for evidence?
No, I don't.
Automatically?
I can actually really quickly tell you why. Okay.
No. Yeah. Okay. Tell me why really quickly. Okay.
Okay, really quickly. So when Black Lives Matter was formed, it was formed on the basis of Trayvon Martin.
I'm not talking about Black Lives Matter. I'm talking about average people.
Let me just explain it. So it was formed on the basis of it. People saying it's because of the Trayvon Martin shooting. It wasn't, right? It actually was formed after the person who did the shooting was acquitted. The
Okay,
Rodney King, hold on, the Rodney King beating that was done in 1991. The beating was in 1991. There were no riots then in LA. There was outrage, no riots. But the riots happened a year later because the officers who did it were acquitted. So people are not.
Ali,
it's not about.
no,
Yeah.
we agreed not to do this because this is exactly what I was trying to avoid. Because I say something and your reaction is to something completely else, right?
Okay.
The BLM,
I don't agree with it.
The main BLM activists are way more on top of these things, and they're actually looking. Their entire lives are about this, right? They're looking at the data and stuff like that. But I'm talking about the general public. This is what I want to make sure that we don't talk past each other, right?
Sure.
What I'm talking about, like and again, this I think this is something that happens on all sides, right? People just come up with conclusions, whether right wing or left wing. They just don't look into stuff. It just their side says something and they agree with it without actually looking at data. I don't think that was an extraordinary claim.
Yeah.
But okay.
But we I think we disagree on that. I think that people are. Yeah.
Okay. So you disagree on that. Okay. So we found some disagreement. Okay. So here's another thing that we probably agree on. Do you think a lot of people are unaware of the improvements that has been made in the number of police shootings?
In the number of police shootings separately?
And also like unjustified killings in general, not just the shootings.
Unaware? Yeah, I think a lot of people are unaware.
Okay.
Do
you also think a lot of people are unaware that there has been that United States is one of the least racist countries on the planet? Do you think they're unaware?
I think people are unaware about it.
Okay.
I think people.
And do you think that it's important for the sake of continuing these improvements in the future? Do you think these are important things for people to know?
I think they are important things for people to know.
Okay, great. Here's another thing that I didn't mention that I think we could agree on is that this is the last thing, okay? Well, it's a big one. Okay, so I think it's irresponsible for both sides. Like, so I'm going to say one irresponsible thing on one side and the other one on the other side. If you know the 1350 that people throw out there, right? 1350, you know what I'm talking about? So when people say Black people are 13% of the population, but they're responsible for 50% of, not the crimes, the homicide, I think, right? Homicide rates, 50%, right? So even though Black people are 13% of the population, they're responsible for 50% of homicides in the United States, which shows it's irresponsible to just throw that out there without also mentioning that this is mostly because of socioeconomic factors. Because if you do throw out there without providing that context, you are basically you might be on purpose or not unintentionally suggesting that there is something inherent about Black people that makes them more violent. So when you do mention that, it's the responsible thing to do is to also provide some context and say that this is because of some history and socioeconomic context and factors and all of that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, when you talk about offending rates. But that's not all, though. I think it's also important to point out that most of the studies done on this actually do account for the increased offense rates. Most of the studies, the data on this, like the researchers, obviously they're researchers, they're professionals. So they know that there are increased encounters in certain populations, and they account and they correct for that when they
account. I think they all do. I mean, I think, But I'm talking about the average people, they throw these numbers without context, right? I'm not talking about the researchers.
Yes.
But also the other side, when they do mention the fact that Black people are disproportionately targeted, they also need to point out this 1350. They also have to mention the crime rates as well. They cannot just, without context, just say, like, I know the researchers don't say that, but a lot of people out there are throwing out like the disproportionality of the fact that Black people are targeted without mentioning the crime rates. The other side is also responsible for mentioning the crime rates and address that while they talk about the fact that the Black people are being targeted.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can do it by just saying even when accounting for the increased offense rates in Black communities,
right,
we still see a disparity. You can say that, right?
right. But I'm not
Or we
talking. I
don't
know
see
you do that. I know you do that, Ali. But do you agree that a whole bunch of people that they're just mentioning, oh, black people are disproportionately targeted, and they do not talk about the crime rates? They're also being irresponsible when it comes to the
Yeah,
presenting the data.
I think they should mention it, and I do it because I think it's the right thing to do.
Right. So, sorry, one last thing. When it comes to systemic racism, you agree that it doesn't make sense that systemic racism as a definition of, adding that to the list of definitions of a racism makes absolute sense, because explicit racism is not the only way people are being, there's not the only source of bias against certain group of people. When we're talking about explicit racism, we're talking about racism, intentional racism. But when we're talking about implicit racism and racism by outcome, this might not be racism by intention, but it still is affecting people the same way explicit racism would affect people. So it's important for us to include that as part of the definition of racism. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, this is the thing with systemic. I think this is the most important thing that you said. And just because, we talk about religion here, and to make a quick point, it's like, loads of people who are Jewish, who are secular, and who are atheists still circumcise their kids. It's part of the system. It's not because they're child abusers and not because they hate their kids. It's because they've internalized this child abuse as normal. They think that it's okay. So you can act against your own interests and against your own people's interests. Even you can have Black people who are acting on implicit racism as well, because the system that was built during the time of Jim Crow. Right.
So do you think that it's also very important for us to not let people use this definition of racism, which is systemic racism, to come up with the conclusion that that the existence of systemic racism means that individuals are explicitly racist? Like, that's a very because the fact that we're using the same term when it comes to systemic racism, we're using the word racist. A lot of people are coming out with conclusions that, I don't know, cops are mostly racist or stuff like that. And it's very important that if we do want to talk about systemic racism, and if we're using the same vocabulary, if we're using the word racism, then we also need to educate people that this does not suggest explicit forms of racism when it comes to individuals.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So systemic racism basically means that there are disparities in outcomes based on race. That's what it means. So you can't tell. I can't look into the mind of Derek Chauvin and see if it was racist. Even the guy who killed George Floyd, I don't know for sure if he was racist. I can't.
Oh my God. Okay.
MRI scan on him, but right. Good. But I do know he was an asshole. I don't know that he wouldn't have done that to a white guy. But what I know is that he's working with a system that was built during the Jim Crow era and before, that hasn't been updated. And this is the system that actually trains and produces these officers. Okay,
so you agree with me? You agree with me that even in the case of George Floyd, right, there is no way right now, maybe it will change, for us to know if that individual was racist against Black people. You agree with me?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think with individuals you can ever make that. You can't make an assessment that Ilhan Omar was being anti-Semitic when she wrote those tweets.
Well, let's not get off track. So let's take but I just wanted to make. Sorry.
And by that I mean you just can't peek into people's heads. But you do have data showing that police overall tend to react more aggressively to Black people because of physical formidability.
We already agreed on that.
Yeah, so
we already agreed. Okay, so those are the list of things that I thought you would agree with me on, and I was right about all of them except one of them. I have a different list of things that I think we could disagree on, but I'm gonna, because I've been talking for so long, I want to let you do your talking first.
So I just want to kind of make a little bit of an opening thing. So I won't take more than 5 minutes. I'll start the stopwatch. Okay, this guy's for everybody who's watching. This is my hold on. Okay, there you go. I'm starting it now, and I'm going to stop myself at 5 minutes. Okay. So, and Armin, just go ahead and make notes and stuff if there's something that you want to respond to. Okay. So I want to start talking about, I just want to address some of the opposition that we've gotten, the people who are arguing against it, who are saying that this systemic racism doesn't exist. Right? I think that it's absolutely clear that it does. I think the data that for systemic racism is absolutely overwhelming. Like there's loads of it. There are a handful of papers and a handful of studies that they talk about, and I could actually talk about the problems with some of those studies. Armin, you already mentioned some of them already. Okay, so first of all, whenever you hear the skeptics talk about it, they're talking about shootings, police shootings this, police shootings that. The data that they talk about the Ronald Fryer paper, they talk about the Johnson paper, and they say, well, this is the data on police shootings. So here's the problem with this, that police shootings doesn't even begin to cover what we're talking about. It doesn't begin to cover what Black Lives Matter is about. Was George Floyd shot by police? No. Was Eric Garner shot by police? No. Was Freddie Gray shot by police? No. Was Rodney King in 1991? Was there any gun or any shooting involved? Absolutely not. No, because these people were beaten. The Black Lives Matter slogan is "I can't breathe." I can't breathe has nothing to do with police shootings. So all of these people that I mentioned would be excluded from the data on police shootings. They won't even be part of those studies, right? So in a lot of ways, when they talk about that, in light of what's happening right now, they're talking about two completely different things, okay? Now, the second thing is that let's talk about how these movements started. And this is where, Armin, the point that we had where we disagreed on, right? Whether it's about systemic racism and what the public is reacting to. And so I started talking about this a little bit before, is that when Black Lives Matter started on their website, okay, on the website, it specifically says, quote, Black Lives Matter was founded in 2013 in response to the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's murderer. So first of all, started with the Trayvon Martin case. Trayvon Martin, who was shot by George Zimmerman, he was shot, but George Zimmerman wasn't a police officer. So even that wouldn't be included in the police shootings data. Trayvon Martin is not a police shootings case also. So the very foundation of Black Lives Matter was also based on somebody who wasn't shot by police. Okay, and the second thing, the important thing to remember here is that it started in response to the acquittal of his murderer. Okay, and this, I think, is what Black Lives Matter is about. This is what all of this, all of these protests, right from the beginning, right from 1991 when the Rodney King beating happened, was about. Now, what happened in 1991? Rodney King was beaten very brutally by these four white police officers. People were outraged. That happened in March 1991. Now, when did the riots happen, the Los Angeles riots? In April 1992, April 29th, 1992. What sparked them? The acquittal of the four officers who beat him. So this wasn't about the actual beating. This wasn't even about the police brutality. This was about the acquittal of the people who are doing it, the police who are doing this stuff, getting away with it, things that we've seen on video. Okay, and this is one huge difference between now and before. Is that before, we used to look at police reports, well, this guy committed a crime, he got beat up, sure, he deserved it. The police are probably doing the right thing. Their purpose is to serve and protect. Until the video evidence started coming out. Now you have video evidence, and it turns out that the official reports are contradicted by the video evidence. Even in George Floyd's case, they said he was resisting arrest. Video showed that he wasn't. The report for Breonna Taylor said that, she was okay. She wasn't, something happened to her while she was sleeping. Turns out she was shot 8 times. So this is about accountability. It's about injustice, and it's about fairness. Okay, so Black Lives Matter, all of these protests, they're not about police shootings. They're about something beyond that. If we're talking about systemic racism and bias towards Black people, and we're saying all of that exists, all of that's okay, but it stops just before they're starting to shoot somebody. That one little twig on the tree, okay, that is not part of the entire tree. That we have to look at separately. When you're doing that, you're really, really grasping for straws and trying to find one thing that fits your narrative. You have to look at the data, you have to look at the evidence, and you have to look at all of it. And that's the thing I want to start with. Exactly 5 minutes.
Okay, so I just want to point out how nothing you said negates any thing I've been saying in the past
Not at all. I know
Not
I
at
think
all,
we agree
right?
on this. Yeah.
And in fact, some of the things that you said I already mentioned on the things that I thought we're going to agree on, and you did
Yeah.
agree with them on that, right?
Yeah.
I also want to mention something somebody might say to you in response to look at things more broader. But I also think
I forgot to start your 5 minutes. I'm starting them now, so I'm not going to interrupt
oh,
you.
I have 5 minutes.
Yes, you do. Go nuts.
Okay. Okay, I don't know how long it's going to take, but because a lot of people may be like, "Oh, first of all, we weren't looking at police shootings only. We're talking about a whole bunch of things as well." And if you want to be broadening this discussion, why are you only looking at police violence? If Black lives supposed to matter, then the elephant in the room is black on black violence. That's sometimes fair to bring up, and sometimes it's not fair to bring up, because I think a lot of times when people say, "Oh, what about black on black violence?" that kills way more black people than police violence kills black people. Okay, and they are correct about saying that, but a lot of times people just throw that to distract from addressing police brutality. And when they do that, it's not fair. It's important. If you want to solve a problem, sometimes you need to focus on it. If your activism is on police violence, it's fair for you not to focus on black violence, because your activism is focusing on police violence, right? So it's sometimes unfair to bring up, like Ali said, we need to look at everything broadly. So somebody said, "Oh, well, what about the broadest? Let's get more broad. Let's talk about black on black violence." I think that's usually used as a distraction tactic, but sometimes it's also fair to say, for a movement that is labeled itself after saying Black Lives Matter, it doesn't seem like Black lives actually matter if you're not tackling the main source of Black lives ending, which is, black on black violence. Again, I'm not saying that's always used. That tactic is always used in good faith. Sometimes it's just, if your activism is focused only on police violence, it's fair for you to focus on whatever you want, right? I'm actually done responding to what you're saying, but I do have a list of stuff that I think we will disagree on. That might take more than 5 minutes to say, so I might not say it now.
No, let's do it. Let's. I stopped the time, so let's go for that.
I mean, right now I think we could just do back and forth on each one of them instead of like doing 5 minutes, right? Because again, I just want to tell you, Ali, the people who are calling me that are based on the things that I posted in the past week and coming after me and saying, like, Ali, like, even people who are liking my posts are being attacked. Like, people are getting flooded in their inboxes just simply for liking one of my posts, right? And I have said nothing in any of those posts that you disagree with. And it's very interesting to me. To me, what I'm addressing right now is mostly in this whole wokeness wave that we're dealing with right now in response to these police shootings, which is, it's going to make tackling all the problems that you mentioned more difficult for us to tackle. You know what I mean? If people are not even able to have honest conversations about these things, for me it's easy, because I don't have much to lose. Like, people think like I'm complaining about people coming after me. It doesn't affect me at all. But because I don't have a boss, I don't have a career in the United States, I don't have a group of friends that would abandon the friends that I care about, would not abandon me about any of these things. But I can imagine how difficult it is for people to have any honest conversations about any of these things if they have a lot to lose and they have to deal with the backlash that I'm experiencing. For me, this is nothing, right? But for them, this is a lot. And if you want to honestly tackle these conversations, you cannot be so, I mean, when I'm talking to you, Ali, I know you're data driven. I know you're looking at the statistics, right? But most of these people are not. They have emotionally come up with a conclusion and they are married to it and they're not willing to give up. and they go at people who disagree with them with a vengeance, Ellie. And you know that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, okay. Right? So, yeah, look, one of the things we agree on is I think that we should be able to talk about things. This isn't the first time people have told me that you're racist and Ellie, why are you talking to Armin? Why do you still do the show with him? He's a Nazi. You know that's not the first time. You've also been called anti-Semitic. You've been called many things. So the one things that both of us agree on is that we should be able to have these conversations. So, that's a straight up. I think for me that is unequivocal. It's clear we should be able to have them. Right. I think the points that you're making, the stuff that we agree on, I hope that people who are listening to this, they understand what you're saying. What I think the problem is sometimes with you is that you are a little provocative. You do like to tweet things that will get a reaction. You're not doing it just to get a reaction. They're usually things you believe, but you do like choosing messages that tend to be provocative. And then you do get reactions. For me, for me, the reactions don't matter that much. Okay, what matters is the conversation. And in this conversation, I talk to a lot of people who have opinions that, who are not even as conciliatory as you are. I mean, who are not even thinking about this, who are thinking about this in a way, who are completely denying that any of these disparities exist. I talk to people like that. And I'm open, straight up, a supporter of Black Lives Matter. I agree with the movement. Do I think it has problems? Do I think there are fringe levels of it, like the woke thing that you're talking about, people saying this sort of place that they have in Seattle where they have no police, abolish the police, isn't that? Of course, I think that that's crazy. And I'm not the only one who thinks it's crazy. The mainstream liberals, Obama thinks it's crazy. Biden thinks it's crazy. Bernie Sanders thinks that that's crazy. He doesn't think that you should be abolishing the police at all, right? So I do think that there's a problem with messaging generally with liberals, but I do look at a lot of things outside of Twitter. I think a lot of this sort of woke, super woke, authoritarian view of conversations really happens on online, especially on Twitter, not even as much on the other social media platforms. And I don't think that they're that significant. If it was that significant, honestly, if Twitter was where the world was going, then Jeremy Corbyn would be Prime Minister of the UK instead of suffering the worst loss since 1935. And Bernie Sanders would have easily trounced Joe Biden, who everybody hates on Twitter. So I don't think that that's very representative.
Okay, Ellie, you say I post things that is going to get a reaction. And that is true. But how do I know that it's going to get a reaction? This must be a huge problem if I know telling people something as obvious of resisting arrest is a bad idea. The fact that obvious statement triggers people, the fact that many people think that I must have been joining the alt-right for saying that obviously, whether you're white or black or Hispanic or Asian or Middle Eastern or whatever, resisting arrest will increase your chances of getting shot. The fact that people associate that obvious statement with being alt-right, and the fact that we know that that's going to get a negative reaction even before posting it, shows that we have a huge problem.
I disagree with you on the resisting arrest thing. I agreed on the point that it's a bad idea overall. But I think what some people might be looking at, who would have a problem with your tweet, and I would have a problem with somebody who just tweeted, hey, listen, you shouldn't resist arrest. I think Jimmy Bungash once talked about, if you're being arrested, just shut up and comply. So I disagree with that. And I disagree with that not because I think resisting arrest is a bad idea overall, but I think that you're not contextualizing the point. Okay, the point is that if you're part of the Black community, right, and you have experienced with your cousins, relatives, yourself, your kids, a disparate treatment from police, and you don't trust them, right? For instance, if cops are if there's a neighborhood where cops that come in, they arrest women, and then they take the women and then they assault them. And this has happened, you've heard this several times. And now this cop is coming to you and he's trying to arrest you and your sister. right, you would resist arrest because of your perception. About 75%, this is the data, 75% of people, white people, say they trust the police when they come to them. Only about 34% or something like that of black people say that they trust the police because they don't think it's going to lead to anything good. They think they'll get their fingerprints, get them falsely accused for something. There are things like that that have happened. So I don't think it's as easy as saying that just resist, just if somebody of cops saying something to you, shut up and comply. Let me say one more thing to that. Black families, parents tell their kids repeatedly, they teach them what to do when pulled over by the cops. And you know what they say? They always tell them, there's articles written about this, comply, listen to the officer, keep your hands on the steering wheel. So they do teach you. It's not that they don't. They all know it's a good idea to comply.
Oh my God.
Right? But
Ali, you cannot do this to me. If you want me not to interrupt you, you cannot go off tangent and say like.
That was 2.5 minutes.
Okay, but in response to something, okay, what you said does not negate anything I said. Okay, the fact that, I mean, you kind of confirmed everything I said. Okay, first of all, saying do not resist arrest, it's very easy for somebody that is not in the middle of an arrest. It's very easy for somebody who's not in the middle of an unjustified, unfair arrest that has no idea what the hell is happening. Okay, that has never been in a stressful situation like this. Maybe that would make it even worse. That has also led to believe that most cops are racist and your survival rates just drop to almost zero based on what you heard in the media. Like, you don't know if you're going to make it out of this alive, even though that's completely wrong. Most arrests, whether black or white, does not lead into anything violent. Most of them, you agree with this, Ali, most of them do not lead into anything violent. It does lead to more violence when it comes to black people than white people, but still a very small percentage, right?
You're still missing something, though, but go on.
No, okay, but we know that it's like, but if you have led to believe that this is probably going to cause violence, you are more stressed, right? There's many different reasons why you could be stressed. Just any form of confrontation with people stresses people out, let alone somebody with a gun coming at you and arresting you for something that you know that you haven't done. It's not easy, okay? And guess what? Because it's not easy, that's why black parents tell their kids, they tell them more often than once that they should not resist arrest.
Yeah, I know.
Because it might be in your instinct that this is unfair, I need to fight it. And because it's not easy to do something like that, you need to be told more. You need to hear this more. So so that you manage to do a better judgment against your own instincts at that time, right?
Yeah.
So and then it's interesting that you say, well, they are saying that to them. Okay, great. Never mentioned that they aren't. And the fact that they are telling their kids to not resist arrest, then you are agreeing that this is a good message. Do not resist arrest. If you're black, I know, but I don't understand what is missing. What is this? What is the problem with saying resisting arrest? Right now in this environment, people say this is a bad timing. It seems like it's the best timing because the response to this, Ali, has been, what are you talking about, Armin? What are you talking about? No, hold on. Yeah. The response to this is, Armin, it doesn't matter if you resist arrest or not. You're fucked either way. That is people's perception. That is going to put people at risk.
No, I don't
think going to get people killed.
That's not the perception that people have, Armin. So there are two aspects.
That's the perception in my community. I'm not saying this is representative of the whole, but this is what the people are telling me. And I'm not saying that this is a statistical data that proves what the trend is. But if this is what people who follow me believe, and I'm speaking to people who follow me, this is our general understanding from the people who seem to be caring about Black lives, the BLM people that follow me. not the BLM people themselves, the BLM supporters that follow me, they're pushing out a narrative that resisting arrest does not influence your risk of being killed. And that's a dangerous idea to put out there.
You're looking at this very, very cerebrally. Very cerebrally. So you're looking at, when we are talking about data, we are talking about data. Okay? We are not, everybody doesn't think that way. So here's what the context in which they're looking at it. Okay? You have had protests about this guy, George Floyd, a black man who was killed, completely not resisting arrest, killed by black cops. Killed by a white police officer.
That is not a sorry,
no, hold
Andy,
on.
you're going
hold
off
on.
track.
I'm not.
Before I let you speak, can you be careful, because what I posted is not response to the
Armin. I know, I heard you.
But you gotta go and say a whole bunch of other things that is not relevant.
Even if I do, you can go on. That's how it happens. That's how these conversations happen. You got to let it happen. We can't control it too much. Okay. Now, just hear me out. So there's a white man who killed a black man. Okay. Who wasn't resisting arrest. Everybody saw the video. All right. The police report said he was resisting arrest. Okay. Now the police report said that why did they kill George Floyd? Because he was resisting arrest. Eventually, what's going to go to the FBI? It's going to be the police report. Okay. So now all of this is happening. This guy gets killed. The police said he was resisting arrest. The video comes out, shows that he wasn't resisting arrest at all, like zero. And then Armin Navabi comes and tweets, like, guys, come on, please don't resist arrest. This is a problem. Okay, so that is a context in which people are looking at it. Okay, the thing is,
that is insane.
It's not insane. So here's the problem. It may not be rational. It may not be logical. It may not go with the data. Okay, but if I am a black person, we're speaking in a position of privilege. Neither of us are black. Neither of us have had any serious legal problems. We're generally well off. But if I am a black person who lives in a black neighborhood in Baltimore, okay, where there's a lot of policing happening, because, predictive policing says that these communities need more policing because of higher offense rates or whatever. Okay, so, I come across a cop and then they're arresting me, okay, for something I don't think I did. Now, if I'm resisting arrest, I'm not thinking, okay, wait, the data shows this, and then these are the chances that I might be abused. These are the chances this is a good cop. And according to the data, I think I should go ahead and comply with. That's not the way we're thinking. I'm thinking, holy shit, this happened to that cousin of mine last year, and look how he ended up. This happened to the sister of mine. I saw this guy on TV, and this happened to him. I need to figure out. Now, this guy in Atlanta who was shot at the Wendy's in the back when he was running away, okay, he was on parole. He came out of jail after a very long time. He had 4 daughters, or I think he had daughters. One of his daughters, it was her birthday. He wanted to get home. He fell asleep at a Wendy's in his car while he was drunk. And then the police started trying to arrest him. Even if he had a small arrest, he goes back to jail, even though he'd been trying to put his life around. So what is the problem there? The parole system. The parole system is very, very brutal to people who have done their time. The people who have criminal histories who've done their time. So he's thinking, and I would have done the same thing. I would have thought, holy shit, I turned myself around and I made the stupid mistake of falling asleep drunk in my car, and now I'm going to get arrested. And even a small arrest, even if they let me go later, this is going to throw me back in jail. I'm getting the fuck out of here. That's how he's thinking. He's not thinking about the data. He's not thinking about anything else. So that is it. So of course he took his chances by resisting arrest. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't resist.
I said for us not to interrupt each other, we have to avoid just going off tangent in directions This is exactly what I predicted. This is exactly what I said happens when people have.
I think this is going really well.
I know, but let me tell you what just happened. Okay, I say a true thing, and to avoid I added the context as well, right? Even when I add the context, what you respond to me is to repeat the context that I mentioned that is out there to me, repeat exactly the point that I made back to me as if it negates anything I said. So I said, when you are being arrested, it's unreasonable for us to expect for you to be as logical as us with the convenience of sitting behind. I said that. And now you're giving me anecdotes of making the exact same point that I brought up.
I'm not. I'm asking you, was that also in your tweet? that it's unreasonable for us to expect it. The tweet
was give the context of this is not at all to blame the victims. The fact, and this is meant to increase the likelihood of the victim being alive. Yeah. So in fact, the tweet might have been a little bit too extreme to the other side, because it's assuming every single one of these times they are the victim. Like it's assuming no justified. The tweet is assuming no justified shooting, right? The tweet is assuming that when I'm saying that this is meant to save the victim from being shot, but I'm suggesting that even if you do get shot, even if you do a stupid thing and you get shot, you are still the victim. You do not deserve to get shot because you did a miscalculation, or because you gave into your instincts, or you did something that later on you might have realized that this was the wrong thing to do at the time. Even if you do something stupid, even if you do the most dumbest thing you could possibly can in that situation, okay, you still do not, the stupidity, even at a time that is hard to think, does not make you deserving of being shot. You're still the fucking victim, even in that situation.
Yeah, that it's like people drawing Muhammad cartoons, right? Like you would tell them that, hey, listen, it's never a good idea to draw Muhammad cartoons if you're living in a society where that is punishable. So don't blaspheme, don't speak out too much, okay? Don't resist like the authorities when they come for you, when they do those things, okay?
Right. So we agree.
It's like saying that.
Hold on.
Right. So
wait, no. I tell people in Muslim countries that if you're an ex-Muslim, shut the fuck up right now, right? And stay alive. And it's not my decision. Again, people say like, who are you to decide? No, a lot of these ex-Muslims ignore me, and it's their decision. And they're like, you know what? I don't care if I die. I want to fight about this. My advice to them is like, don't get killed, but it's their decision if they don't care. If they want to continue fighting, even if it's at their risk, obviously they have full control over what they want to do, right?
But those who do, you admire them.
Yeah, I admire them. I don't go out and giving them the advice to like do things that might actually put them in harm's way.
That's all this is. That's all this is about.
So again, but and then you say, what, you shouldn't say this after when in this environment that there's a police shooting.
Oh, I didn't say you shouldn't say it. No. I didn't say you shouldn't say it. I said that if you say it in this context, okay, then you are going to get a response because people will look at it in that light. They're going to look at it under the light of the,
First of all, I do provide the context as well, right? Like look at the
No, you didn't provide the context. We're specifically about George Floyd's police report that he was resisting arrest, about that being a lie. That wasn't the context that was provided. You provided context in general that doesn't mean he should be shot, right? And I agree with all of that. And I actually agree.
This was not even about George Floyd. I don't even understand why this is about George Floyd.
This is about George Floyd. If you're commenting on this nowadays,
I'm responding to what I've always, my activism. First of all, this whole police brutality thing is an area of activism that needs a lot of good people in it, and I admire all those people in there that are fighting that fight. And it's great. Okay, that's great. My activism is about people. My activism has always been about taboo things that people should not be able to say. Taboo things, especially taboo things that are true that people are not about to be said. This is not in response to the George Floyd situation. This is in response to the wave of wokeness that we're seeing.
Yeah. But
let me tell you something, Ali.
I think you're missing my point. Yeah.
You're saying look at the context. I'm looking at the context.
That's not all I'm saying. But finish what you're saying, and then I'll tell you what I'm trying to say.
Like before all of this happened, I thought that the woke left is over. I thought like it's just done. We need to focus on the alt-right now. I thought everything, this whole anti-SJW movement is not necessary that much anymore. The wokeness, they came, they had their moment, they're on that way out now. The bigger enemy is the alt-right. They have always been relevant. They're historically more significant. They're harder to. It's a stronger meme. It's harder to kill.
They've got power. They've got the
They got power and all of that. But right when I was thinking this, and I actually announced it that I'm going to go more after the alt-right this day. But then this happened, and I think that I underestimated the woke cult a bit, because it seemed like it's not just this whole idea of some things are just too taboo to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more mainstream than just a fringe woke people, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe wrong. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
And I also want to mention what you're describing. Again, I'm not saying you're saying this, but it reminds me of the time when people say that, Armin, you can't just say fuck Islam right now because there was a shooting of Muslims in mosques.
I'm not saying that.
And I know you're not saying that, but yeah. But I'm always saying, listen, there's you want to talk about Muslims being shot in a mosque? There's 1 million Muslims in concentration camps right now in China. Okay, Muslims are being discriminated against and oppressed in India every freaking day. If it's not the right time for me to say fuck Islam now, it's not the right time to say fuck Islam anywhere, at any time. Okay, and I can tell you, when it comes to the police violence, Ali, the people, this woke cult, they will never be satisfied with any context that you give them. Okay, and I have given them context, and they are never satisfied. And the interesting thing is, what's going to happen, Ali, the improvements that we have made, that the United States has made when it comes to reducing the number of shootings, that improvement is going to continue. Not, thanks to the activists and the people who are calling it out. But the mainstream. See, another thing you do, I tell you what my impression of the mainstream attitudes are, and then you keep mentioning like, well, on the BLM website, right? Okay, I'm not talking about. Yeah, I know. Okay, I've seen that. I've read that myself.
No, it's a topic.
And I agree with you there. No. I'm talking about the mob. Okay, what's going to happen is going to be like, let's say, like the police shootings drops to 1/10.
Which mob are you talking about? Which mob are you talking about? The protesters?
No, I'm talking about the Wokistani Mujahideen and
where?
I'm not talking. Well, I mean, if you don't see them, then
no, I do see them. I see the woke the woke left. We've talked about that a lot.
Let me make my point. Let me make my point, and then you can ask me where.
So yeah, I'm timing like how much we're talking. Just
okay. Sorry. Just last point, and I'll let you speak. Even if it drops to 1/10 of today, okay, the way that people think, the average Americans thinks right now, is that we have made no improvements. United States is one of the most racist countries in the world. Things are just as bad as, I don't know, the 1960s, apparently, for a lot of these people. And even if we drop the shootings to 1/10 of what it is today, video will still come out. And good, rightfully so. I'm hoping more videos come out. But once the video comes out of the police, I'm hoping a video comes out so that the cops don't get away with it. But once the video comes out of another shooting, of unjustified killing of a black person by cops, the way that these mob work, they're going to look at that and they're going to see that as evidence that nothing has changed.
Which mob?
I mean, Ali, what do you want me to do? If you do not see the sea of people that come at you for things like this, if you do not see the way people think, then you living in La La Land. Okay,
no, I see it on Twitter, and I see it. Okay. I know that there are peaks and crescendos of these things that happen, and then they die down in just short periods of time. But here's the thing.
Do you agree that the average, let me just be more to make this claim less of a easier for you, okay? Do you agree that most people, right-wing, left-wing, centrist, Muslim, Christian, atheist, Hindu, the way that they come to their conclusions is not based on reliable methods?
Of course.
Okay.
But
All
I don't
I'm
think.
addressing right now. So this is not an extraordinary.
No, okay. So wait, I think they do come to their conclusions based on reliable methods. So that would be a no. But I don't think that all of them delve into the data and the specifics the way that we do. They don't all do their individual scientific research. They have a general perception based on some knowledge and some sort of reaction that what they're seeing on the media, what they know of their own communities and their lives and their personal experiences. That's how they make their assessments. A lot of times they're on the mark. A lot of times they're not. A lot of times they see things that people in the academic community who are looking at the statistics don't. A lot of times they're experiencing things that are being covered up by authorities that don't make it into the data, right? And I can actually give you an example of that from last week, like where the number of police shootings, police-related, not shootings, but killings in New York City in 2015, there was a report that the health department did that found that there were 2 times as many, more than twice as many, that official city reported 46 shootings in the year of 2015. And this health report that just came out last week, right, by the health department, that was actually underground, was buried for 3 years. A 2017 report showed that for that year there were 105 shootings, more than twice the number reported. Okay, so there is covering up. And you already acknowledged this.
Yeah, I already acknowledged this. I don't understand.
Right. So there are people who are aware of this. A lot of the people who are giving you these anecdotal stories, they are seeing things firsthand that people who are doing the data, who are processing only data, are not seeing. Okay.
I'm not gonna let you do an anti-intellectual argument that people's personal experiences are sometimes more reliable.
That's not what Armin, you're misrepresenting me here. So I gotta correct. No, I am not. I'm telling you about a report. Okay. Hold on. I have to explain it. I want you to listen carefully because this is not this is the exact opposite of that. Okay. It's countering what you're saying. Okay. The New York City officially reported 46 police-related deaths in 2015. Okay. In 2017, the New York City Health Department conducted an independent study, a health department study that showed that the number of deaths were 105. Okay, in that they showed there were 6 black people who were killed who were unarmed, 5 Hispanic people killed who were unarmed, 0 white people killed who were unarmed. Okay, now they showed this data. The problem is the disparity. 46 official, that's what everybody thought. That's what's on all the archives that everybody's using for their reports. There are people doing research based on this number of 46 deaths, when the real number is now confirmed to be 105. Okay.
Right.
So now that is actual real data, both of it coming from official sources in the city. So
oh my God.
Now,
Ali, people ask me not to interrupt you, but what you do, you just repeat the same thing over and over again until I need to stop you. So
I'm trying to explain to people that this is not an anecdotal thing. This is actually data.
It's interesting when you interrupt me, nobody seems to mind.
Okay, Armin, hold on. So
hold
on.
No, hold on. It's my turn. This is why I need to interrupt you
because you don't let me see. 12 minutes straight. 12
okay, go on.
Okay.
But can I respond to what you just said for a second?
Let me just finish. Okay, go ahead. Respond. Okay. Let's move on.
So no, because it's not the fact. Like obviously, the fact that the data could be wrong is exactly why I pointed this out. And sometimes data gets corrected, right? But data when reports get corrected by better reports, that does not mean what people try to do. That is like, oh look, therefore we could go to anecdotes because we have proven that sometimes data is unreliable.
You're misrepresenting what I'm saying.
No, I'm not. This is exactly why I say that's why sometimes people say. See? Okay? So I just want people to understand that the only way you could negate data is with better data. Okay? What people generally do, public, right wing, left wing, and be like, oh no, this is my personal experience, so fuck the data. Obviously, that's not what you're saying.
That's not what happens. I am trying to tell you something else.
Looking at the data that you mentioned, so what is the actual number of police fatality? No, the fatality caused by police shootings in the United States in 2019. unarmed citizens.
No, that I don't know. That we're moving on to a different topic. So now
do you have that number by any chance?
No, I don't have that number offhand, right? I know that it's out there. It's probably either it's out there or it hasn't been recorded yet. I don't know. But I know that the data is skimpy for the last few years. But that's a different topic. I want to stick to this one thing, and I want to make another point about the way that you're going about this conversation. Okay, so so first of all, the thing that I told you about the disparity, this is an explosive report that came out by Mara Gay, who's an investigative reporter for the New York Times, actually dropped this, and then the health department actually released a report just last week. Okay, so this is something that was huge. It had implications for policy. It could have prevented, it could have saved lives, but it was buried by Bill de Blasio, who is trying to make connections with the NYPD. Separate thing. It's fine. What I'm trying to say, what you're talking about the anecdotal, I'm not for a second saying that we should start relying on anecdotal data because there are these disparities.
Good.
What I'm trying to tell you is that this disparity shows that sometimes when there are people out there saying that, no, there is more going on, this 46 number, I don't believe it. I'm skeptical. And we turn around, we're like, what are you talking about? This is official data. This is the data. You have to look at the data. You're talking anecdotally. And it turns out, right, that a lot of them, I'm not saying that their anecdotes, their specific anecdotes were real, but it turns out that a lot of them were right to be skeptical of the officials' figures, okay? Because they live in these communities and they knew that there was more going on. They didn't know exactly how much, they didn't know what the data was, and then later on that was borne out by the updated data, okay? So we cannot dismiss people's human experience. Now, the other thing I want to say, the way that you're having this conversation, say it, yeah.
Can I respond to this first? First of all, I never suggest that we need to dismiss people's experiences. And in fact, the best way to not dismiss people's experiences is to collect them in a scientific method and make it publish it in a peer-reviewed research. Okay, so you do never dismiss people's experiences. Okay, but what you do, Ali, okay, but you kind of did what I suspected you do. You're putting too much emphasis on each anecdote because data is wrong. People's anecdotes also suggest that we have.
Just explain that I'm not.
No, you did that. You did say you didn't, but then you did. You say you don't. You
all right, so let's move on to the next thing, and I'll tell you why.
No, I just want to address this really quickly because people sometimes look at research and they're like, of course the research is wrong. I personally experienced being abducted by aliens. Like, of course this is wrong, right? Like, you don't need people's personal experiences to be skeptical about research. You should be skeptical about research even if you don't have these anecdotes. You should be, of course, you should be skeptical about research.
Okay, I agree with that.
In fact, the research paper themselves tells you its limitations and why you should be skeptical about their research.
I agree with that, but most people aren't. When they see numbers, they just believe them. And I see this with the ID, like, you're talking about this, the woke SJW cult. Right now, the IDW is also a cult, right? Because what they're doing is that a lot of the people in the so-called intellectual dark web, they have these 3 or 4 people, these sort of like black token people who are coming up with really selective things based on, I think, 4 or 5 studies, and they're using that to illustrate the entire picture. So you should not accept data blindly. We agree on that. You should not. You should always be skeptical of it.
I just want to point out that it's okay. I like it when you interrupt me, but it's very interesting because nobody gets bothered when you interrupt me in the live chat. But I'm not complaining.
Why is that? No, there's one.
I don't know. I think like it's very interesting that there's certain people that get really offended when I interrupt you, but they are completely fine when you interrupt me. It's just fine. But anyways, I just want to.
There's one person.
It's very interesting that you bring this up to me, Ali, because like you are saying this as if this is against anything I said. Because anybody who follows me and the content that I produce notices that every time I bring up these data, not only I mentioned to them that this data obviously could be wrong.
Not talking about you.
Well, you were responding to me. I also mentioned to them, here are different ways that it could be wrong, right? I even go over a list of the ways that why this data might not be capturing the different variables, right?
I think we're.
So what is it that I'm doing right now that is an issue? Like, what have I said that you're
No, we're not. I mean, I already explained that, so I think that we can agree to disagree. There's one problem here, though, that I want to talk about, and that's the way that you're having this conversation. So, when you said that, when I put out these things and people respond this way, And then I told you, I'm like, this is why they respond this way. And then you're like, well, I wasn't saying that. I'm like, yeah, but you're talking about what the people are saying. I'm trying to tell you what they're saying. So what I think is that when we're having these conversations, instead of talking about, well, there's so much focus right now. Everybody's saying, oh, I tweeted this and everybody got mad at me. I tweeted this and then people had this reaction. That derails from the topic. If you're having a conversation, who cares what the reaction is? If there's woke people, there's alt-right people, there's all kinds of people that are going to have reactions. I mean, that happens. We should not
be... Ali. You address, you say things that I already addressed. This is exactly why I already said that I have no issue with people coming after me. I actually kind of like it, to be fair, right? I told you that what I'm seeing, because to me there is no cost associated with people. Okay, I lost around 400 friends in the last week. Okay, 400. I'm not going to miss any of them. I don't care. But what's going to happen is I'm talking about the other people who have something to lose. Okay, the conversation is not going to be able to. We're not going to be able to see much progress if other people who are not willing to go through what I can go through, they're not going to be able to have honest conversations.
I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's that dismal. So I know that it's terrible in the sense that there are a lot of people I know in the Me Too movement. There are a lot of people who got burned in a really bad way, and I disagree with that. There are people here who have said certain things and they've lost their jobs. I think that's terrible, and I think that it shouldn't happen. Okay, but a lot of the people who are talking about how this is a huge problem are people who have platforms to talk about how this is a huge problem. And I think that I don't think it doesn't exist. I just think it's being exaggerated. I think it's a very Twitter-centric kind of problem. Okay, and I think that it's going to be a flash in the pan that'll die soon. Now, I heard, for instance, Sam Harris's podcast, and Sam Harris is a friend of both of ours.
Can I respond to that, please? Okay. What you just said.
But let's not talk about the conversation. Let's talk about the topic.
Because that's my entire point, though. The thing is that you tell people that we need to take people's personal experiences seriously, and a lot of people are coming to us and saying this is a huge problem. I can't. People are being silent. People cannot say the things they want to say. And you're dismissing them. You're dismissing people. You're telling me like, oh, we can't dismiss people's personal experiences, and you're dismissing people's personal experiences. The reason why you
now you want to go on anecdotes?
No,
you're going on anecdotes. Now.
I'm telling you what you are doing against your own the standards that you are introducing. Okay.
Yeah, and you are now not
you're
providing
me, which is fine.
Armin, you're not providing data.
You can interrupt me. That's all good.
This whole woke mob thing. Okay.
But another thing is, what I'm saying is that it's okay to make claims without data as long as you are understanding that these claims are hypotheses and that you're not married to it. You could make those claims. You could be like, hey, this is my theory. This might not my theory, my hypothesis. And I don't have data. This is my general impression. This is an educated guess. And because I don't have data to back this up, as long as you mention, as long as you're clear that you're open to change your opinion because you don't have data to back it up. And and the reason why you might not get the impression that there is a huge problem when it comes to policing people's tones and the way they say things in a way that is unrealistic. Ali, I'm telling you, people are being attacked. People are being attacked simply for liking my posts, right? This is not intimidating to you or me, but it is to a lot of people. Okay, and the reason why you don't experience it, Ali.
No, I do. I experience it just as much as you do.
No, not. I highly.
Okay, maybe not as much. Well, it depends. You're more active than I am. I don't look at it. I don't engage with people as much, and I'm not on YouTube as much. But I do experience it. I know it's real. I'm not denying it.
See, you say I put out things that I know it gets a reaction. The things that I say, they're completely true. You, Ali, sometimes post things to get a reaction out of right-wing people.
I am telling you, I do. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, hold on. See, I like it that you interrupt me. Just I just like abusing the people in the live chat who are getting triggered from me interrupting you. I want to trigger them a little bit more.
Listen, let's agree with one thing, that we both interrupt each other, and we will, and we are going to talk over each other.
No, I know. I just like the people. Some people are crying in the live chat over this. I just want to poke at them a little bit.
Okay, let's go on.
But you post something sometimes on Twitter that you don't even believe is true. You think it's a joke. And you yourself, if you're held to it, you're like, you know what, obviously I don't believe that, it's a fucking joke, right? But you put it out there to get a reaction out of a whole bunch of right-wing people. I like that.
I don't put it up because I think it's a joke. I make jokes, so I'll make jokes on
but you knew, like, you do it and this is going to get a major reaction, and you don't mind it.
Right. My problem isn't that you post things, and I said this again, my problem isn't that you post things that would get a reaction. My problem is that after you get that reaction, you're like, oh my God, people are saying this stuff. You don't have to if you put something out to get a provocative reaction, then just enjoy it and then go on your life. But stick to the topic. So right now what's happening is that, we have a topic here. So this is a separate conversation. We can have a separate episode about conversations about conversations about conversations, right? We can have that. Because that seems like what a lot of, I've noticed this with, and that I agree with Sam Harris on a lot of things, but like this, recently, even with Sam and with that a lot of the the Weinstein brothers and all of this stuff, they tend to keep on having these conversations about conversations and There's a book out there, and I can't remember who wrote it. It's how to have conversations. Have this conversation, have that conversation. So I think that is a separate topic that we can talk about, but unfortunately, that topic comes into everything. So what we're talking about right now is we're talking about systemic racism. We're talking about the Black Lives Matter protests. We're talking about whether it's a positive or a negative thing. And these are the topics we're talking about, but eventually it ends up into how we can have a good conversation about it. And we're having conversations. It's good. So
sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead. You're going to
Do you agree that the fact that a lot of people get triggered by a statement that America is the least racist country in the world, that people, one of the least racist countries in the world, the fact that people think that this is an alt-right narrative, the fact that you saying, hey, resisting arrest is not a good idea and it will increase your chances of death, the people that think that, okay, this sounds like an alt-right narrative, and this person is obviously so people think that, oh my God, how much more wrong can you be? Like, you have, okay, I'm not talking about the people like you, Ali, who would come and say, okay, maybe, yeah, this is technically true, but maybe the timing isn't right. Okay, you guys can make your argument. I disagree with that, but I'm not saying you're the problem. But all the other people who think like this is obviously wrong, and Black people will get shot either way if they're stopped by the cops, right? Whether they resist arrest or not. The people that think like, fuck your statistics, Armin, listen to people's personal experiences. I know you're not saying that, okay? But the people who do say that, if these, you don't know if these ideas are common or not, okay? I think they're common. You think they're not as common. Do you agree that if this kind of thinking was common, that would be an issue? That's a huge issue. Like the way the fact. Okay, good.
And I'll tell you why. Because if they were common, then Jeremy Corbyn would be Prime Minister of the UK. Bernie Sanders would be the Democratic nominee. But they're not. And not only are they not.
Wait, no. Bernie Sanders should be. Bernie Sanders should have been the Democratic nominee. And he's not.
That's fine. But the thing is that if this was true, Bernie Sanders, a lot of the woke mob largely supported Bernie Sanders. Biden was hated online. Ultimately, Biden trounced him. It wasn't even close. Like, it was a competition. So it wasn't even a competition. So I don't think that it's as big of an issue as people think it is. I do think it exists. I think it's problematic. But overall, these protests that are happening right now, when you said that statement, and this is what I picked up on, you said America is one of the least racist countries on earth. Yeah, no, there you go. Thank you, Josh. Thank you. He's my man. But when you said America is one of the least racist countries in the world, I made a post about that, agreeing with it. I said it is one of the least racist countries in the world. We all know that. You've lived in Iran. I've lived in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia. I know that the U.S. The racism in the U.S. is, we see it. It's visible, but that's not because it's more prevalent. It's more visible because there's more accountability. But here's my question. My question is, how did America become one of the least racist countries in the world? How? Okay, it was because of the kind of stuff that you're seeing right now. It's because of the kind of protests you're seeing right now.
It's because of
I
agree.
Conversations. Okay.
I agree with this.
I know. And here's the problem. What we can't distinguish when we're in the thick of it is the enduring stuff versus the fringe stuff that is going to die out. When the second wave feminist movement was happening in the 70s, a lot of amazing things happened. Reproductive freedom, Roe v. Wade, relatively pay equity, more sort of workplace rights for women. All of these things, they came about. That was the enduring effect. People at that time were freaked out about burning bras. Okay, that's not something that lasted. So now the stuff that you're seeing right now, abolish the police, all of this bullshit, like these are not things.
Ali, can I respond? Because
the main thing is that you're going to end up with a reformed police system. You're going to end up with an NFL that is okay now, that's reverses decision on taking a knee. You're going to end up with a NASCAR that has banned Confederate flags. So there's a lot of things. You're going to end up with more social work, right, in policing. Those are the effects. It's a very positive thing. We're not
this is going back to saying true things and back and forth. Even though we agree on the part that I didn't agree on is that the fact they said this is not a big issue. What is a big issue always will be a big issue, even if has been the biggest issue in humankind's history from the very beginning, is the way people arrive at what is true and what is not true. Okay. That is the activism I focus on, and also to challenging taboo things that people say that you should not be saying, right? That is why I did my ex-Muslim activism. Okay. This is the thing that I'm saying right now is completely in line with me fighting against Islam, right? People, there are many ex-Muslims who do not want the cost associated for speaking out against Islam. Okay. And that's why I say those things, right? And I don't think all of them should say that. This is why I say them, because there's a cost to them. There's no cost to me. This goes, and another thing when it comes to ex-Muslim activism and atheist activism as a whole is not just the fact that we don't think there's no evidence for God or there any evidence for the fact that Islam is the true religion, is to use it as an excuse to help people better understand how to analyze information and look for evidence before coming at a belief. This is exactly that. This is exactly that. Even if these issues are not the same issues tomorrow, I would do the same thing if somebody believes in palm reading. Okay, maybe palm reading is not an issue. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, maybe it's a big deal. What is a big issue is people do not know how to make up their beliefs. They do not know. They use the wrong methods. And this shows it. To me, this shows it. This is it. The reactions that so you completely what you do, Ali, you dismiss how big of an issue this is, and fine, because I'm using
Armin, we can talk. What I'm saying is that
I'm not saying
no,
I'm not making any claims right now about whether it's a big issue overall or not. Okay, what I know it's a big problem in my audience. Okay, and given the people who I am dealing with is my audience, right? And I know this is a big problem when it comes to people that I see, then that's what I'm going to address. Okay, this is a big problem. Another thing is you a lot of times dismiss online activity as if it's not part of the real world sometimes, right? More conversations are happening right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter than they are happening in what you call the real world, even though this whole online community is part of the real world. And in fact, there are more honest conversations happening on these videos, because in the offline world, there are bigger consequences to you expressing your opinion. And another thing I want to point out is that ex-Muslim atheist rebel is saying, it's very funny, I highlighted this comment up here. He's saying, Armin, where did he learn to speak? He is responsive. He is responsive to listen to. So ex-Muslim atheist rebel, where the place that I learned how to speak, you do not use did. And what they taught me is that you cannot say did he learned. Okay, so it's did he learn. So
okay.
I don't know where it was, but it was better than the place you learned. Okay,
I think it's good to have, we can have a separate episode about, this whole, because so let's talk about where we agree. We agree that the woke thing is ridiculous, that it's a cult. Okay, we agree that it's authoritarian, that this whole cancel culture, throwing it out of the, and this isn't just me. Obama himself has a whole video out there where he talks about it, how it's like ridiculous. So, that's something we agree on. The problem is that we don't agree on what the scale of this is. I think that a little while ago, recently, the scale of this was big. There are things, there are phenomena, cultural phenomena that are flashes in the pan. We had a bet on Jordan Peterson, whether he would be relevant 2 years from now. I think we made that bet about 2 years ago. And it eventually, some of these things are enduring and some of these things aren't. So for me, the main thing is when I look at the Black Lives Matter movement, okay, when I look at any movement like this, I try to separate the substantive issues that require real change from the sort of the fringe, loud voices. Now, the problem is you do need them everywhere. The civil rights movement, you also had, all the sort of the critical race theorists. You had Malcolm X, you had the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan, all these guys. They were also in the civil rights movement. Ultimately, right, there's still voices on the fringe. Ultimately, the main goal of the civil rights movement, right, which was a complete repudiation of the Jim Crow's laws, the desegregation, all of that eventually was achieved. Right? And that's what ultimately matters. All of these movements are messy. Every time you have something like this, it's messy. There's lootings and there's, violence, and that's all. It's terrible. There are opportunists who come in and they're terrible. Antifa, I absolutely despise Antifa as much as I despise the far right. So all of those things are there, but I don't think that these are consequential on a mass scale, right?
Yeah.
Like what the main thrust of the movement is. And what we're getting right now is we're getting police departments being absolutely reformed, all the other things I'm talking about. You've got major corporations speaking up about this. You've got a recognition of the data. There's more awareness of the data. There are a couple of papers that showed no racial disparities in police shootings, like the one Sam Harris quoted a lot, Ronald Fryer. Not a peer-reviewed paper. All of the data came from police reports. All of it. Okay, so another paper, right, that was done by this guy, Ross. What's his name? Hold on, let me find his name. I'll get that right name. That was peer-reviewed, and that showed the exact opposite. And it actually corrected.
Wait, what are you talking about? Sorry.
No, we're talking about just generally.
We agreed on all of this stuff, though.
Yeah, we agreed on all of this. So yeah, the Ross paper. This was by where is this? I have to get his name now. Anyway, yeah, I'm not going to bother with it right now. Okay, but so there are different. So even with police data, the police shootings data, the ones that actually show racial disparities, even after correcting for higher offense rates, right, they are peer-reviewed papers that actually deal with better data that is out from more sources and look at police reports and media reports rather than just the Ronald Fryer paper. So there are ways to look at this data. You can't, and we both agree on this, right? You don't just look at the data blindly. Right? You have to look at the data critically as well.
Right.
You have to look at things like, sorry, let me say one more thing. You have to look at things like collider bias. Okay, so collider bias it talks about when you're looking at racism, right? But the premise you're using to look at the racism has racist elements in it. That complicates, that's a certain kind of bias that's introduced. So for instance, when you're looking at police data, you're only looking at police encounters. But when you do a proper study, you have to take a general sample. So you have to look at all possible encounters and then look at the data from there, right? Instead of just looking at the police encounters, because now your sample is already biased. The problem is when you're only looking at police records, you're only going to be looking at the cases that triggered a police report in the first place. So your sample is already contaminated, and you're actually underrepresenting the amount of systemic bias that might exist. So
we agree. We are. I mean, again, we're talking about things that we focus on things that we might disagree on a little bit, because we agreed on all of this. This is why I started with the thing, because what we disagree on, what the main thing that we disagree on, is the things that I said that a lot of people find controversial. What we established is that you think those things are true. What you might disagree with them is the timing of them and the framing of it. You might have a disagreement with me on them, but you agree that they are technically true, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So, would you? What is your? So you mentioned that data is important. Obviously, we have to be skeptical. We need to be aware of the limitations of the data. We also have to always look at better data and replace our understanding with
look at data critically.
All of that, right? Do you think that it is common among the people that we're talking about for them to be dismissal of data, to think that to not even look at data, or when people bring up data against their points, they exaggerate the importance of personal experiences over? Okay, so you think that's common?
I think that's universal.
Okay,
I think that everybody. I think that the majority of people look at data. It's called confirmation bias. Is one of the most common. It's a pandemic, right? That's a real pandemic. Is that whether it's and I've seen this on the side of all of the Sam Harris podcast as well. I've seen it on the side of the even the mainstream liberals. I mean, they are selective with data that they think that suits their purposes, but nobody's really looking at it overall. But the mainstream liberals do tend to have more of a point, because the data for systemic racism is actually, as a fact, overwhelming. Right? It's not only, it's not just like
it seems to me that the main, we seem to be agreeing on almost everything except how significant the Wokistani people are. Right?
Yeah.
So given that that's our main.
In the long term. In the short term, I agree that it's significant. I think it's going to die down.
Wait, I agree with you. Okay, I agree with that, actually, Ali. I don't think they're a big deal in the long run. I think in the long run, the alt-right is a bigger problem than the Wokistani people.
But I'm saying...
So we don't even... Wait, so we don't even disagree on that?
No, we disagree, because I don't think that it's something that... I think it's on the way down. I think it's dying down. As I told you, I said...
Oh, you contradicted. No, it's on the way... It's on the way down because of activism, because of being called out, not because they just naturally die out.
And who called it out? You called it out. I also called it out just as much as you did.
All right, so
I had
that doesn't
a whole chapter about it in my book.
I know. So what do we disagree on again?
We are disagreeing on. You were saying that. Don't you think that that's a big problem? I said no. I don't think it's such a big problem. I think it's on the way down, and I think it's going to die out because of look at how things are happening. You had Believe All Women before, right? No, just a couple of years ago. And then now you have this,
Yeah, I know that Believe All Women thing is out the door. So good. But what you agreed with me on right now, I agree with you that long term, this Wokistani cult is not a big deal. I agree with you. Yes. Long term, the alt-right meme is a bigger, scarier, more powerful meme that we need to worry about.
They have the White House. They have the White House.
Yeah. I'm not going to go there right now, okay? But whatever you think, I think it's a bigger one. It's a bigger one. It's a bigger monster. We need more resources against that. But you also agreed that right now, the Wokistani thing is a big deal. Right now. It's okay? We agree on that as well.
I don't. I think it's on the way down. I think it's on the way down.
Those are not mutually exclusive.
It's not something that I'm... So here's things like now.
Ali, saying it's on the way down and it's a big deal right now, it's not contradictory terms.
I know, but I don't think it's worth spending this much time talking about right now, because I don't think it's that big a deal.
Right? Ali, you just said that they're on their way out because of people like me and you calling it out.
Yes.
So given that it's a big deal right now, it's on its way out because of people like us calling it out.
Okay. If you want to put it that way, I'll accept it. I'll say, okay, fine. It's a big deal that's on the way out. Let's just go with that.
Because of us
Because of us.
continuing to call it out,
And
that's why I
unfettered,
spent time on it. That's
right.
why I spent time on
it. Okay. But if we'd let it go unfettered, it was a big thing. But I do think that it's like a Twitter-centric type thing that I know it's real.
By Twitter, you just mean social media as a whole, because all the shit I'm dealing with.
I think it's more Twitter. You don't see it that much on Instagram.
I'm seeing it more on Facebook than Twitter, so I don't know what you're talking about.
So I want to address one thing here that I'm seeing in the patron comments. Someone talked about
patron live chat. This is public.
Oh, so. And this reminded me, I don't know if this is what they're getting at. Yeah, live chat is Exponent at 1207 was saying, is the criminal justice system also overwhelmingly systemically sexist? 1207 a.m. Can you highlight that?
Can I address that? First? Because I think I'm going to say something that you agree with, okay?
I hope so, yeah.
Because
you know why he's saying it, right?
No, yeah, because it's not the reason why. Because what the suggestion is, where is it? Okay, here.
1207, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I know, but I see Exponent's point. Okay, the suggestion is like, okay, so if Black people are being discriminated more, that could be explained by the fact that they're committing more crimes, in the same way that men are being arrested more. Because of the same reason, because men are committing more crimes. Exponent, the problem with that argument is that when you adjust for the fact that the Black people commit more crimes, when you do adjust for that variable, you still get more discrimination against Black people when it comes to non-lethal violence against Black people, right? Even after adjusting for that. And you also see that significantly in the justice system when it comes to passing out sentences, the number of times that they're passing out sentences and how severe those sentences are, right? Mm-hmm. So the justice system would be sexist against men if you can show that once we adjust for the fact that Black men commit more crimes, even if you adjust for that, then they're still being disproportionately targeted. Only then you could claim that the justice system is sexist against.
And I think that there's another element to this, right? And this is just the fact that it's a false analogy. But for the reason it's a false analogy is because men and women have scientifically established biological differences. Okay, and one of those, the major biological differences, and anything outlined by James Damore in the Google memo, the main biological difference is a propensity towards aggression and a propensity towards violence. And this
mostly because of testosterone, correct?
Not just because of testosterone. There are genes associated with the Y chromosome. They're genetic factors. If you give people at the XYY karyotype, if you add another Y karyotype, you get more socially deviant behaviors. You have they're overrepresented in jails and incarceration rates. So there's genetic aspects, there's neurobiological aspects. Okay, there are hormonal aspects with testosterone, and there are chromosomal aspects. So there are many different ways in which men and women are biologically fundamentally different, especially when it comes to aggression and violence. Now, if you want to take that same analogy and apply it to Blacks and whites, then if you're trying to say that Blacks are somehow genetically, chromosomally, hormonally, Black people have a higher tendency towards violence, then your analogy stands. But I don't think anybody's really trying to say that. So that analogy actually doesn't work.
I also want to respond to Exponent, because his Exponent saying, Armin, if you could prove that, you will be honored for getting those judges fired. Sentencing isn't just based on skin color. So the problem with that, Exponent, again, but by the way, I just want to make it clear, I like the way that you are bringing these up. Like, I'm not saying anything, like these are good points to make. The problem is that the data actually does show that. The problem is that doesn't mean that the judges are racist, because again, when you have race, when you can prove, and this is an important thing for this whole wokey people, regressive people to understand, when you prove racism by outcome, what you're showing is that there's something there, some implicit form of racism, or like something within the system that is giving you these outcomes that is not justified based on the crime rates. That does not prove explicit racism by the judges. Okay, that's a very important point, because a lot of people who believe in systemic racism, their conclusion is to believe in explicit racism by individuals, but one does not follow the other. And that's why you don't fire these judges, because even if the number of external factors that could attribute to something like this is so complicated and over the place. And if you do show to people that there's something within this machine that is producing these results that could not be explained by higher crime rates, the conclusion is not that, oh, these judges are racist, right? That's why these judges should not be fired. Maybe if you could put within such a system, within such a machine, if you insert any kind of judge, you probably will still get some bias. Even if you get the least racist judges in the possible, you could put it in that system, you will still get that result.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I say something in response?
Do you agree with this, Ali?
Well, I agree with that, but I'm going to disagree with something. Can you highlight that comment again from Exponent? Same one?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I missed it.
One of the things that you're saying is that it's saying that it's only based on skin color, or that it's not based on skin color. The fact is, and the research shows, that it is based on skin color, quite literally. So I have 3 studies, and this I have an exchange that I did with Matt Thornton on Letters Wiki, and you can go, and all of these studies I've hyperlinked to them. I have 3 studies that are in front of me right now that are showing that if you take light-skinned Black people, medium-skinned Black people, dark-skinned Black people, and white people, and you look at the sentencing that they get overall as a group
for the same crime,
for similar crimes. Okay, the white people get lower sentences, the least. Light-skinned more, medium-skinned more than light-skinned, and dark-skinned more than medium-skinned. So it's not just a matter of overrepresentation. It's not just a matter of there's increased offense rates. There are at least 3 studies over here in front of me, and there are many more that have shown it. One is from the Journal of Ethnic and Racial Studies. The other one is from Harvard. The third is from the Journal of Empirical Legal Studies, the legal journal. So all of these actually show that the sentencing is actually has a relation directly, not only to skin color, Black and white, but skin color in terms of light-skinned Black people will get lower sentences than medium-skinned, who will get lower sentences than Black.
Right, but Ali, you also agree that this does not prove that the judges themselves are racist.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's not. It doesn't prove that. It shows that there's potential, that implicit racism is strong. It shows that systemic racism in the judicial system, is strong. You can also look at bail amounts, like the amount of bail.
Yeah, but I just wanted a yes or no answer, because the point I wanted to make after was that it's important to mention that every time you're talking about systemic racism, because a lot of people are taking this whole data and on systemic racism, and they're coming out with this belief that cops are racist, most cops are racist, most judges are racist. If you want to use the word racist when it comes to systemic racism, it's very important for us to hammer this point that this does not prove explicit form of racism by individuals themselves.
By the individual.
And the reason why this is important is because if more people have this view, not just of the system, but of the individuals within the system that they're dealing with, this is going to increase conflict with them, right? It's going to increase tensions between potential victims and cops. There's a lot of studies also that shows that perceived unfairness by individuals is going to greatly impact what's going to happen during an arrest, right? So it's also very you have to point out systemic racism, but you also have the responsible thing to do is to constantly, Ali, you say we have to provide context, right? So the context that you have to provide in this situation is every time you say that, you have to say most cops aren't racist. You have to say that every time, not just when people are asking. You know how I said it's when you say 50% of the homicides are committed by 13% by Black people, even though they're only 13% of the population, and the responsible thing in that situation is to provide context and say this is not because of anything inherent within Black people. This is history and socioeconomic factors. Given that that's the responsible thing to do over there, it's a responsible thing to do here also, to tell people every time you point out systemic racism, to say most cops aren't racist. Do not see the cops as your enemies, right?
Yeah, and I actually think that has been said pretty often. I mean, I know that
by you, Ali, not by you.
No,
you are more responsible than most of the people.
I'm talking about the mainstream people. Okay, so a lot of the Black communities, they have people in the police force. There are a lot of Black cops out there, Armin. They've said this. The brother. Okay, so I have to talk about the narrative among mainstream liberals. Let's go. Oh, okay, yeah. There. So Armin already said. There's a comment. I'll just read it out. Armin saying, "Armin, stop using black on black crime to deflect away from police brutality." Ex-Muslim atheist rebel. First of all, I love you, and I'm on your side, and I'm really, really glad that you're showing solidarity with me. But Armin did talk about how black on black crime is a deflection. It's a deflection to get away from the topic. It doesn't have to do that. It's not about systemic racism. This conversation is about systemic racism. Black on black crime, white on white, people killing whites. The U.S. bombing Hiroshima. I mean, we can't really get into all of those things. They're all deflectionary tactics. Anyway, right? Now, what was the question you asked me, Armin? What was I talking?
Sorry, I didn't interrupt you. I just highlighted the comment. I didn't.
No, but I know. But what were you asking?
I was talking about how the responsible thing to do is to always also mention that most cops aren't. Yeah.
So I want to talk about how one of the things is that in mainstream conversation within the Black Lives Matter movement. Okay, the majority. I know there's some people who said crazy shit, but the leaders have talked about how the looting is not a good thing, right? All of all of the stuff, this anti-cop sentiment that all cops are terrible. We got to get rid of all cops. That's not a real thing. Obama has come out. Killer Mike has come out. George Floyd's own brother did a speech on this. The Atlanta mayor, Keisha Bottoms, she did a talk on this. Like they've all come out. The leaders of the movement in the mainstream liberal circles have come out, and they have pointed these things out. That this isn't about individual cops. This isn't about calling all cops racist. This is about a system. It's about a system that was set up during the Jim Crow era and before, and it has not been updated. Okay, it's about a system that disincentivizes people from getting their lives back together when they've done their time. It's a very and there is a problem with the U.S. system. There's a massive problem with it. So I think that it's a good. I don't actually understand.
But Ali,
yeah.
Can I? Sorry, you're a bit selective on the things that you see as well. Like I think like you, because the people that you mentioned, I see them as well. The people that say that. But it seems to me that you might be also not seeing the problem. I don't know, like every time you notice some people saying the narratives that you like, which is rightfully so, I think you're like, oh, see, people are saying these things. But then the million other times where a whole bunch of idiots are saying things that are extraordinary, like it's obvious, you and me, with both of us agree that this is obviously moronic, you're like, that's just a fringe thingy, like it's not that big of a problem. Maybe I am actually, maybe I am being selective, and I
would say, I'd say that I think that you are, and the reason that I would say that is simple, is that when I'm
admitting it, you're not.
I'll tell you, I'm not being selective. I have had problems with the woke, but we've talked about it so many times. Everybody who's heard this, listens to us, knows that I agree with all this stuff. But I am correctly calling one thing a fringe element, and I'm correctly calling the mainstream voices, right? The mainstream voices. So the fact is that who's saying abolish the police? A couple of op-ed writers, a congresswoman, the random congresswoman, and that was the most prominent person who said abolish the police. Who's not saying it? Okay, Biden is not saying, Obama is not saying it, the Floyd family is not saying it, Bernie Sanders himself, who's the candidate of the woke people.
CNN is saying it, MSNBC is saying it.
CNN is not saying abolish the police.
Well, I didn't say they're saying. Okay, so maybe they're platforming people who are saying it. They're platforming people.
No one in the mainstream,
which is fine. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying people with big following. Ali, there are people with mainstream people that are suggesting people that
Ilhan Omar
that
is
are
saying it. Okay, so let's give you that.
no,
Ilhan
no,
Omar
no,
said
like
about
okay, who's that guy? Kendi, how to be an anti-racist?
I don't even know who that guy is.
Okay,
So,
but these books are now being used as authoritative among
by
mainstream corporate use as for corporate policies and stuff like that. Okay,
so
these
is the Bible.
these are
Okay,
and I call that the Bible.
I
What's your
know.
point?
And
What's
those,
your point? What's your
if you're
point? Like,
what I'm saying is,
hold on. Let me
yeah,
see, guys. See, sometimes you don't make
okay,
me.
go on.
They are suggesting that there needs to be a federal authority out there, funded by taxpayers, right? That goes and looks at not just okay. There are some laws. They're saying that it's not just laws that might be against black people or laws that are for black people. They're saying there's no such thing. Every law, the most neutral law out there, there needs to be a federal investigation on how this is going to affect black people, right? So if there is like a city government that wants to decide like, oh, we need to fill these potholes, or that, oh, we need to increase like more, less tickets in this, traffic tickets in this environment, there needs to be a federal investigation on each one of this.
Don't
on
think
how
that you're giving it so much more attention. It's a fringe view.
It's not fringe. These are Ali. These are the people.
View.
These are the people who are being seen as heroes.
Here's the main.
Okay, Ali. Go read the book, White Fragility.
Why?
Okay, but Ali, this is the bestseller on Amazon right now. After this,
feminine mystique was also very, very a big thing in the second wave feminist movement.
Ali, the fact that these books are now after these police violence, the fact that these books are now the bestsellers on Amazon.
Of course,
does that not say you anything?
No, it doesn't tell me anything, because you know what it takes to be a bestseller on Amazon? I'll tell you what it takes to be a bestseller on the New York Times. You know what it takes? 9,000 copies in 1 week. And that's what it takes to be a bestseller. That's what it takes to be the number one bestseller.
I can come up with examples after examples of not just why this is a trend. It's a big problem. I'm not even making.
Okay, let me talk. Okay, so okay. I get exactly.
I like again live chat. I like Ali interrupting me, and it's fine. Go on.
No, because I got your point. I understand what you're trying to say, that all of these things, they're bigger than they are. There are people with platforms who are talking about these things. And let's talk about the facts, okay? Abolish the police. People are saying we should get rid of the police, like that little community in Seattle, which is just batshit insane, okay? That is a fringe. What is a mainstream point? The mainstream point, it started with the slogan. It's a very bad slogan, defund the police, and we should change it completely. Right? But it was about police reform. What does that police reform mean? It means that there's too much pressure. Police are dealing with too many things. You're dealing with a mental health issue, call a cop. You're dealing with homelessness, call a cop. Substance abuse issue, let's call a cop. That's way too much stuff for cops to do, number one. Traffic stops, like giving speeding tickets, call a cop. There's way too much stuff for them to do, number one. The other thing is they're not qualified to do a lot of those things. So what do? You take some of the funding that goes into policing and you invest it into other resources, like mental health specialists, like social workers.
Ali, we agree on this, and we don't.
I know we agree on this, but I want to explain there's a whole audience listening. I know that you and I do, but so that's what they do. They divert funds over there. Does that mean that the social worker is going to show up alone? And
I know we agree on this.
No, it doesn't. It means that they're going to go with a police officer, but the police officer will have a secondary role. Okay, so that is the reform that is being adopted and supported by people like Bernie Sanders and people like Joe Biden and everybody else who's in the mainstream liberal circles. Okay.
Okay.
Now,
Ali, can we focus on things we disagree on? Okay.
We agree. I mean, you're changing the thing. You just talked about how white fragility and the Kendi or whatever, all of these things are, they're very influential. They're influential among a certain number of.
What's his name? Let me actually say his name correctly.
That's great. Like, how influential?
I don't know anybody. Ali, I'm really. That's not any proof. I'm really bad with names, right? How to be okay, Ali?
They're just not. I think that we've already talked about them, and I just.
Ali, what do you think will happen? Do you think is if we go? Like, I consume a lot of this.
That says Ibrahim. Oh no, Ibram. Ibram X Kendi.
X Candy, something like that. All right, but I consume a lot of these mainstream, content creators and stuff. Like, okay, for example, if you like CNN, MSNBC, late night comedians. Okay,
Mhm.
a lot of the things that you agree with me today, Ali, will be on these platforms will be considered beyond controversial. Okay,
Not a lot, some.
yeah,
So
like,
some, and I'll tell you the number one
I mean,
thing.
a lot of the people that you're endorsing as sane mainstream people, if they heard you say United States is one of the least racist
Least
countries
racist
in the
countries
world,
on earth.
they will be like, oh my god, Ali, get the fuck out of here, right?
So that
If you
didn't
go
happen.
out to them, if you go out and tell them, you will be, by these people, I'm not, you will be considered like completely, misunderstanding of what's going on. If you tell them, and I know, Ali, you agree with me on this, that, I mean, you might disagree with me on how big of a problem it is, but you agree with me that anti-white racism is a problem in the United States,
Yeah,
right?
anti-white racism is a problem around the world.
And that it exists. No,
Yes,
I'm
of
not
course it
talking about
is.
the
We're
world. In
talking
the
about
United
that too.
States, of course, around the world, of course.
Yeah,
the problem. But in the United States,
anybody can be racist against anybody, and that happens all the time. All racism matters.
but you also agree with me that anti-white racism in the United States doesn't get called out, and it's as often as it should, right?
As often as it should. No, I don't.
People can get away with anti-white racism easily.
I think I think that people can get away with it pretty easily, but I
Right.
don't think it's not necessarily not
But
called out.
I know we
There's
did. I
loads of
know.
people
Ali, this is what I wanted to. I already said we
called out. It
disagree
gets
on that.
called out
I
more than it
disagree.
should
I
be.
already said we disagree with the amount of it, so that we don't have to. So you don't have to mention.
I am
it, okay?
disagreeing with you more. I'm saying it gets called out a lot more than it should be.
Oh,
Like
what the
there
hell?
is.
Okay, never mind.
Yes.
Okay, so let me focus on the parts that I think we agree on.
Hold on. Don't you
No,
want to know
I
why?
want to focus. Ali, you're missing my point, because I really want to focus on what we agree, to show you that that's what the problem. You even acknowledging that anti-white racism exists. Okay, so me and you might disagree on the severity of it and how big of a problem it is, and that's a topic for another day. But you acknowledging that it exists will make people see you as a radical in a lot of these circles.
Sure. Yeah, it will, and
Okay.
that doesn't matter. So for me, because first of all, it's not really a big enough circle that's going to cause that problem. The other thing is, so the two things I want to say: anti-white racism, right, is being called out.
No,
right?
Ali, I don't. No. That's a different topic. We will have that discussion.
No, it's not.
I didn't want to bring this up to have this discussion about how
Sure,
big of a problem
but
anti-white racism is. I really want to avoid going in that direction. I'm saying we could have the discussion. The only reason why I brought this up is to tell you that the mainstream people that you're addressing, I really don't want to right now. We can if you really want to, okay? But if you want to open that, then I have to start. Responding to that.
I'm only going to say one point about this because you brought it up.
Then that's
right?
going to open the. I have to respond to it as well.
It's not just about anti-white racism. It's not just about that. It's about like all of these conversations and things that are happening. I tweeted the same thing that you did, but you said that it's the United States is one of the least racist countries on earth. So I made a whole post about it. Okay, and then I said that, but we have to look at how it ended up that way. It's because
I said the same thing.
Yeah, it's because of the protests like what you're seeing right now. This is why these protests are good. And in the past, they were way bloodier. So this is why this is important. This is the kind of thing that you.
It's very interesting because you said that again to me as well but that was my entire point.
Yes, that was.
And the people who are following us some of them are so stupid because they think like, oh yeah, Ali, thank you for saying that to Armin. You showed him, and I was like, we didn't disagree on shit.
No, but the thing is, that you
talking about.
We didn't, but it didn't come across the same way because you said that it was one of the least racist countries, which I thought was great. Okay, what I did was I made an entire thread about it. It was 10 tweets.
As if it was negating anything I said.
I know it wasn't. I know that, but I'm talking about how.
But I'm talking about you. I'm talking about the idiot it was.
Too concerned about it. Now, the second thing I want to say is that yes, I do. I think it's very. I talk about anti-white racism, and by the way, a lot of the followership I have is very, very liberal. You talk about comedians, like people like Ricky Gervais, people like Sarah Silverman, people like all these people. like Seth Rogen, like these are the people who follow me, right? And they
you mentioned the sane ones, Ali. You just listed all the sane ones on the left. I'm not. I didn't. Do you ever think that I think that the left doesn't have that? Most of the left is like
a lot of these people are thought of as SJWs for people. Okay, so the thing
but
is,
not me.
I know.
Again, you keep responding like. You give me the examples of not only Ali.
Armin, wait.
No, let me tell you. Let me answer you. Not only you give me an example. First of all, not only did I not say that there are not a lot of sane people on the left, there's a lot of good.
That's not the point.
No, you actually give me the example of the
Armin,
best ones.
Armin, you talk about.
Give me Sarah Haider and Seth Andrews. Like,
yeah.
Come up with the best possible examples.
I said Sarah Silverman and Seth Rogen. Sarah Silverman and Seth Rogen, the comedians, the actors. Sarah Haider.
Wait, is Rogen considered left? Is he? Or is he centrist?
Okay, now hear me out. Here's what the problem is. You say, well, people are saying this, people think this way, people think this way. Then I say, well, people actually think this way. Like, yeah, but I don't. What about me? So we're either talking about people or we're talking about you. Okay. Now, the second thing I want to say is that as far as this, when I talk about the anti-white, racism, yes, everybody can be racist, and that includes racism against whites. People are trying to redefine it, saying you can't be racist against white. Most people I know, and I'm telling you, I come from these circles. These people, they agree with that. They're like, this is a ridiculous idea that you can't be racist against white people. The second thing is you're saying that anti-white racism, you can get away with it more. Okay, individual people might be able to get away with it more. Okay, but it gets called out way more than it should be. Way more. Okay, you have an entire government, the United States government, the entire Republican Party, far right, like these sort of right-wing organizations, majority parties, and who have won election and who own governments in Europe and the US, constantly talking about racism against whites, constantly talking about anti-white sentiment, white genocide. Today.
This is what I was trying to avoid. You said you're gonna.
Every time I say something,
you said I'm gonna say one thing about this. You said you're gonna say one thing about this, and I said,
but I have a lot.
This is not the direction of the conversation we want to go with. We're talking about police violence and racism against white people, and then you are taking. And now I can't respond to you. Like, do you understand? Like, this is why.
I have to finish. Armin, I have to finish what I'm saying. Just today, you had the president of the U.S. who accidentally, tweeted a video with a guy, his supporter, praising how great these people are. One of them was saying white power. He had to delete the tweet. So yes, and people complain about this all the time. You have entire governments and societies talking about how anti-white racism is an epidemic. It's overblown. So this idea that nobody talks about it, nobody's calling it out and everything, it's bullshit.
Ali, you're incapable of staying on focus, and also you're incapable of noticing what I said. You're also incapable of noticing what I said and what did I say. I did not say. You keep on. This is why I started saying the conversation. But anyway, this is why I said. This is why sometimes I cannot not interrupt you, because you keep on saying things that I did not say, and then you say true facts in response to something that I would not deny. Are you seriously talking about the moronic stuff that Trump says in response to any
that's not what I said.
See, you interrupt me as well, so it's fine. But that's fine. Okay.
Anyway, we gotta let's.
You also see you don't let me respond.
Let's finish your thought and let's move on to the.
See, people are like, oh, Armin
overall, I think that
Look at this, and people are so one-sided on this. It's so amazing. And
I'm making arguments. Armin is repeatedly pointing out how he's being interrupted, while everybody in the audience is going to talk about how Armin's interrupted.
I'm fine with you interrupting me, Ali. It's just the stupid live chat thinks that you don't do it, which is they're so one-sided on this, right? I'm pointing it out to them, not to you. I'm fine with you doing it. I'm just telling them why I need to do it sometimes, because I say one small thing to make a different point, and you just take that and you go in a different direction. Whereas it wasn't even the point of what I'm trying to break. I was trying to isolate one thing that we agree on. regards to anti-white racism, which we do agree on, to make a point about how mainstream these issues are, and then you took up the part that I wasn't even trying to make, and then you went on a tangent of making another conversation about something else that wasn't even a point.
You said it was easier to get away with.
No, but I didn't realize that you're not agreeing with that. I was just trying to isolate the part that we agree on. Okay. Like, okay, this is okay, fine. This is the part that we agree on, but you wanted to make his whole speech about the part that we didn't agree on. And now, now, if I don't respond to that, I can't let you just say all of that and not respond to that.
All right. Okay. So let's go on to.
No, I have to respond to that, Ali.
Okay. Respond.
Anti-white racism is the norm in the United States. It's accepted. You say like, oh, people are not. Armin is saying that people are not responding to it. Of course, people are responding to it. You are responding. You're calling it as bullshit. I call it as bullshit, but it is the norm. It is accepted. The statements are like "fuck white people" or "cancel white people," or you didn't get this job because you're white. Or shut up and listen, you're fucking white. Or do not speak, because white, let other people speak because you're white.
You think this is the
norm? Let me finish. These statements do not get you canceled. Yes, you get pushback. Okay, you get pushback from people like me and from people and rightfully so, and thankfully so. These people get called out by you, okay? But these people will not lose their careers. These people will not get canceled from speaking events. These people will not get half of their friends and family all of a sudden dismiss them as idiots for the ways other people who might say it's the same thing about Black people, Jews, Muslims would get, and rightfully so. I mean, they should be called out, right? This is horrific things to say about any community, including white people. I didn't say they do not go unchallenged. You said like, oh, Armin, they get called out. Again, you responded to something I don't say. They do not get challenged. They are accepted part of the United States right now, right? Even the people who do not say these things themselves, even the people who think it's moronic to see these statements, they would not go after the same people if it was the same way if it was being said about other minorities, okay? If you want to respond to this again, then I have to respond to your response. So
no, I'm not going to respond to it. I think that we disagree. I just don't think it's as big of a deal as you're making out to be. But I think that's okay. We disagree. That's fine. But let's go to some questions. We're really.
If you want to go to questions, can I read a question that was sent to us through Patreon?
Yeah, curate the questions because you're seeing them, right? So just read it.
You're seeing them as well. But this one was sent. This is a Patreon message. It's a long message. Should I read it?
Yeah.
By Nicholas, who said I think he might not be here, so he wanted me to read this. Nicholas, which is one of our patrons, thank you so much for being a patron, Nicholas, saying, hello, Armin, Ali and Armin. I just became a patron today. It was long overdue. I have been listening to the show since episode 8. I started after I saw Faisal and Dave Rubin, and I haven't been disappointed since. I was a poor college student in New York City. Okay, so let me go to the question part. He just goes on and saying how great we are and how appreciative. So thank you so much for all that, Nicholas. But here's the question starts here. That being said, I was almost triggered into joining today in particular, and surprisingly, it was something Ali, not Armin, said. Why is that surprising? But okay, but he said it was surprisingly something that Ali, not Armin, said that made me
was triggered into joining or into not joining?
To joining.
Oh, yeah.
Just so I could message you guys. Really, I'm a lurker on platforms like this. I don't think I've ever messaged creators of content or commented on any videos in my life. I think I asked for a song. Okay, so here's the question. The deal is with episode 139, the most recent AMA. I have not seen any content more recent than that. So if this point has been acknowledged already, feel free to ignore it. When discussing police abusing or shooting white people, Ali seemed flippant and even scoffed at the idea that police shoot innocent white people. He said he had not seen videos of it, and for good reason, they don't happen. The viewers provided an example, though I could not see it at the time, and I'm not sure if I could go read it, the live chat now, to see the link. I think it was Daniel Shavers. I don't think Ali
I
really.
did. That's
Hold on.
true.
Okay, Ali really didn't. Ali really. I think. I don't think Ali really acknowledged that video, and it bothered me for some reason a lot. I agree that we should use this moment to correct for historic injustices against Black people, but that doesn't mean that we should brush off police violence against white people. It felt dehumanizing towards white people who may have had uncomfortable experiences or even been killed by police. I'm not saying I'm going to go out and protest every time a white person is killed by police unjustly, because the optics on that aren't good. What I am ultimately pointing out is there is no reason to delegitimize violence done on white people to fight for police reform or gain justice for Black people. Gaining justice for Black people would mean reforming police in such a manner as to limit the ability of the police to abuse all people,
Mm.
including white people.
Yeah.
But this narrative doesn't work if people brush off police abuse when it affects white people. I'm not saying white people are even close to the top of the pyramid of victims of police, but they are part of it.
Yeah. So yeah, police brutality is a universal problem, and that's a fair point. When that happened, if I came across as standoffish, I apologize for it. I think that this is police brutality is something that affects everybody. These protests that are happening, right, that are asking for police reform, are going to benefit everybody who is a victim of police brutality. That includes white people. White people are less likely, proportionally less likely, to be victims of not only shootings, but it's universally agreed. Like all the data shows that in terms of non-lethal force and violence, the kind of thing that George Floyd went through, and there's another case, Tony Timpa. George Floyd, men who look like George Floyd are more likely to go through it than men who look like Tony Timpa. That was shown even by the Fryer paper. But right now, the conversation is about it's Black Lives Matter. That's a conversation. So whenever we talk about Islam, a lot of times we're criticizing Islam. People say, well, what about Christianity? The Bible also is homophobic. And that's true. It's absolutely true. And nobody justifies that. Everybody thinks that the Bible is also a horrible book. But when we're talking about a specific subject, those are generally deflections to move on to another topic. So yes, those there are videos of I don't know how many videos there are of Black cops. Actually, I don't know if that I didn't see that video. I didn't know about that comment. But if there are videos of sort of things that like epidemics of videos of Black cops killing white people because of a known systemic anti-white racism in the system, right? Then there would be an analogy over there. But yes, pretty much this is something that affects everybody. But again, these protests, the reforms that would come about because of it, would benefit everybody, including white victims of police brutality. Yeah.
Okay, actually, I think, Ali, what you said, I'm going to use your example because I think it will make my point very well. It's very unfair when somebody's saying, like, you know what, Islam is fucking bullshit. Okay, Islam is bullshit. And somebody says, what about Christianity? I think that makes absolutely no sense. If you're focusing on Islam, if you want to focus on Islam, focus on Islam. If you want to focus on Christianity, focus on Christianity. If you want to focus on religion as a whole, focus on religion as a whole. It's fine. Okay. So if somebody comes and says, okay, what about white people, when you're actually pointing out discrimination against Black people, that's deflecting against what the problem that you're dealing with, and that is unfair, and you're not helping. I agree with that. But in the same manner, if you say, fuck Islam, Islam is a problem, Christianity is great, Christianity is okay, right? No, like now it's going beyond attacking, focusing on Islam.
Mhm.
Now you're actually making a claim that I need to address.
100%.
So in that situation, I might be like, no, you know what? Christianity is also barbaric and batshit crazy, and fuck Christianity as
Yeah.
well, right?
Where is it?
So,
How does that relate to this, though? That
so
doesn't.
when people are saying like, you know what, there's discrimination against black people, and you come out and say like, what about white people? What about white people? Then you're like, no, that is you're distracting from what they're talking about. But if you come out and say black people experience this and white people don't, then in that situation you might come up and be like, well, actually, so in that situation, if you're responding to people that kind of thinking or those kind of claims.
No, but nobody says white people being killed is great. Like you said, if somebody says, well, no, Christianity is great. Nobody, that's not the right.
No, Ali, you're not listening to what I'm saying. I'm talking and responding to a claim or a belief that is false.
That it doesn't,
okay?
yeah.
So when you are dealing with situations where people think that white people do not experience police brutality, or if it's even if they do, it's a non-issue, okay? Then in that situation, you want to correct that.
Nobody
in that
says
situation,
that.
Ali,
Very
do
few
people
say
say
that.
that?
No,
You said that.
No, I said, but we're talking about police brutality. This is not about police brutality.
No.
This is, I said, hold
Ali,
on.
No, let me. I wasn't finished.
I know, but I get your point. When I said that everybody gets a victim of police brutality, hold on. Okay. Those people are right. The people say that white people who are shot by police are not necessarily victims of systemic racism. They're right. They're right about that. The data shows that black people who are killed are victims of systemic racism.
You're corrected. Because there's no data that shows that the killing, we have no proof for systemic racism against black people. We do have Ali, so let me make a point, okay? We do have a lot of data to show there's systemic racism in many ways against black people, okay? No, not the shootings. I'm not saying no, we don't. Okay, we don't. I'm not saying it's not there.
I'm saying right now.
I've seen the data, but can I make a fucking point?
Yes, make your fucking point.
All right, Jesus.
But you gotta hurry up, man. We're going with okay, go. Let's make a point.
When it comes to deflecting from the point that I'm trying to make,
Armin, you keep.
Let me finish. Let me finish my point, okay? Ali, just because you don't, I don't know how you can even say that. Yes, there is a shit ton of people that are saying what I just said, okay? There's a shit ton of people that say that the police brutality against white people is not a thing. There's a shit ton of them. If you haven't seen
I agree with that. Yes, I agree. 100%. Okay. Loads of people say that. Yeah.
Okay, great. So when that claim is being made, then if in that situation, okay, I'm trying to focus on things that we agree on and not get off direction on something else. Yeah. In that situation, if I come and say, no, in that situation, if I come and say, no, white people are victims of police violence, and this is a thing that we need to address.
You'd be right.
Then I'm not deflecting. I'm not changing the topic. I'm responding to a false claim that needs to be addressed. And I want to point out that, Ali, you might want to correct me on this, because the impression I got from you in our last AMA was that you said that the George Floyd situation, this is what you said, you put out a challenge out there for everybody. You claimed that there is no way that you could find a video, that there does not exist videos of white people being harassed by cops the same way that black people are.
By people from other races, yes. Like if there's
there is. No, you didn't.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure there are. But...
okay, now you're acknowledging it, because
no. I'm talking about racially.
Let me finish. You are now adding stuff to things that you didn't say last week. You're adding,
really going down like a very narrow thing. What the guy said.
Interesting that when you're making a point, You're not going down a very narrow thing, and when I'm making a point, we're going down a very
Because
narrow.
I'm not. I'm talking about mainstream things. You're talking about, for instance, police brutality. People saying,
You're
okay, what
saying
happened
people don't make these. You say people don't make these claims. You made this claim yourself. You said that you put out a challenge for all of us out there. You said it does not. A video like the George Floyd video of that happening to a white person does not exist. And
by
people
a black
found
person who's motivated
now you're
by
adding
hate?
that. You're
I am
adding
adding
that.
that was the context. That
You,
is what I meant.
but
That when you
no,
see, look,
you're moving the
oh God,
goalpost.
okay. Let me break it down for everybody here. Okay, and again, as I said to this guy Nicholas, our new patron, thank you. That if I misspoke and if I came across as being flippant towards this stuff, I apologize. Okay, now here's what I'm talking about. There are two things: there's police brutality and there's systemic racism. There is overwhelming evidence that police brutality exists. There's overwhelming evidence that systemic racism exists. There's overwhelming evidence that police brutality leads to deaths, and there's overwhelming evidence that systemic racism also leads to deaths by police. Okay? Now, if there are people out saying, hey, listen, police brutality, lots of white people are victims of police brutality too, they would be absolutely right. I'd be like, you're right, they are. And that's why police brutality is a big problem. Just take that. That's not what I'm talking about. Can you just distracting me? Okay, so if there's motivated, what a fucking stupid question. Anyway, hold on. I'll tell you why. Okay, it's not when it comes to police. See, this is distracting me. Police brutality is not something that is race specific. That's an overall general problem. If you support Black Lives Matter and they achieve their goals, it'll benefit white people and black people. When you talk about systemic racism, does that exist against black people? Yes. Does systemic racism exist against white people? No, it doesn't. So if someone comes up and says, if you're having a discussion about systemic racism and you're saying, well, this really leads to a lot of black people being killed by police, and someone else says, no, well, what about the white people killed by police? You'd say, no, that's not systemic racism. We're talking about systemic racism. If you're talking about police brutality, yes, it does. Right? If you're talking about systemic racism, then it doesn't. Now, the question that he asked is that how do we know that it's motivated by hate? We don't know. We already talked about that. You cannot peek into somebody's head and see if they hate somebody. The guy who killed George Floyd, you don't know if he was racist or not. You can tell that he was an asshole, right? And he was a very unreasonable, cop and a very brutal person. You can't tell if he was racist. You can't tell if he wouldn't have done that to a white guy, right? There's absolutely, you can't peek into it. How do you know Ilhan Omar is anti-Semitic? Everyone's like, oh, she's anti-Semitic. She's anti-Semitic. How do you know? You haven't done fMRI scans on her head while she's tweeting. You don't know. Okay, you go by what they're saying. Okay, and you make assumptions and then you investigate. You can't unpack what individual people are doing. But can you tell that a system, a criminal justice system, is motivated by hate or motivated by racism? Yes, you can. There are studies that have looked at implicit bias. Okay, there are studies that have shown that people who are physically bigger, black people, physically bigger, young black men, are seen as more threatening to cops, and cops are more likely to deal with them more aggressively. Okay, that's been shown in the data. Okay, there are data that show that when black people are killed, they're more likely to be unarmed. They're more likely. This is a study by NIX. You can look it up. They're more likely to be unarmed. White people who are killed are more likely to be armed, right? So that's another thing. So there is the skin color of the person, whether you look at policing, whether you look at the judicial system, the data shows very clearly, right, that systemic racism is rampant. Police brutality is another thing. So does that make it clear?
No, not at all. Can I respond?
Oh, I'm so tired.
Can I say?
Susanna.
Yeah?
Yeah, go on. Respond.
Okay, so this is what Ali usually does. We say something, and then instead of responding to what we're saying, he goes on track and repeats the things that we already agree on. Okay, we already established everything you just listed.
Armin, you're not going to get away with it this time. Distorting it.
Can I say something without you?
You are distorting, but that is not what I did. That is the opposite of what I did.
Can I say something without you interrupting me for?
No, you say all kinds of things without me interrupting me, and you're the only one who points out that I'm interrupting.
I know. Okay, I know. I interrupt you, but can I say just give me a few seconds?
Say something really quick, and if it's not relevant, I will interrupt you. Go.
Okay. So as like if it's okay for you to interrupt me, then it's okay for me to interrupt you as well. Okay.
Of course.
Yeah, good. Just tell the people, tell your army in the live chat that.
Can we just not use the word interrupt? If we're gonna interrupt, let's just interrupt and let's not.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
It gets like really. Just go on.
Hey, yeah. So what we were talking about before you went on repeating the things that we actually agree on, right? For the third time, I think, is that you said like, oh, people don't say these things. And I said, well, you do. And what we referred to was you in the last AMA mentioning that the things that happens to black people by cops, you didn't say by cops of a different race. If you meant that without saying that, okay, I guess we can't see what was in your head as well. But what you actually said was the things that we see happening to black people by cops do not happen to white people. Show me the video of a cop putting his knee on a white person and what happened to the way that died in the same. Honestly, when you said that, I thought like, of course we're not going to be able to find something exactly like that, because every situation
too exact. Yes. And I'm telling you, we already went. We're going in circles. We're going in circles.
No, I never even managed to finish this point once. Okay, so but we did find that scenario. I thought we're not going to be able to find that, because I thought, well, you're making your requirement for similar is too exact. Obviously, there's not going to be exactly the same thing, but it's actually we found a similar scenario that was actually worse. That was worse. But now you're saying that, okay, what you actually meant was because what that video was white cops doing that to a white person. So you're like, oh, now you're saying what you meant for us to find you a video where black cops are doing that to a white person.
So here's I'm going to say this for the third time now. Third time, because like I said, we're going in circles. If it came across as me being flippant and saying that this kind of thing doesn't happen to white people, police brutality doesn't happen to white people, if it came across that way, which you're saying it did, I apologize.
It didn't come across like that, Ali. It was that.
Okay, so that's where I'm trying to tell you. Okay. In the context of the conversation that we were talking about, in my mind, we were talking about systemic racism. Now, I should have specified that then, which I didn't do. If we're talking about systemic racism and saying that kind of systemic racism happens to people, to white people, just like it happens to black people, okay, then it's wrong. That's it. Okay, great. And I've said that. I said that the third time I'm saying it. Okay.
Yeah. So, okay, but the problem with the way you're. I mean, first of all, let me acknowledge the fact that you're saying that was wrong. I mean, that's fucking amazing. But the only problem I have with your apology is that
the third time I said it.
No. The problem I have with your apology is that you're kind of blaming the people who listened wrong instead of you actually like. When you say if it came across like that,
yes.
I mean, you kind of denying that was very much that. It wasn't just. Okay, it didn't come across. It was intentionally just that.
I am apologizing for it not coming across right. I am not apologizing for the point that I was trying to make, that systemic racism against white people in policing does not exist. Because I do believe, and the data shows, that systemic racism against white people by police indeed does not exist. It's not real. It only exists against minorities.
Okay, that's good. When it comes to policing, I agree with you that the systemic racism shows against does exist against black people.
That is the point I intended to make, and if I misrepresented it, I apologize.
Right. Well, we should that's that's awesome. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Great. So yeah, but do you agree, Ali, that we agree on most things?
I think we agree on most things, but to me, what I'm hearing from you actually in this, and especially that list of questions you said in the beginning, I am surprised. I didn't think, based on the last time's AMA, right? Based on last time's AMA, I thought that you had a completely different position on this, because I think that you guys were talking about how systemic. You were talking about how anti-white racism is systemic, right? But at the
It
same
is
time,
not in the police department, but it is.
yeah. So
We could talk about the thing is that the reasons why you assumed those things is because people just hear the things that they want to hear, rather. But here's the thing, Ellie. None of the things that I said.
Me, Armin. Armin, it's not just me. I mean, there was a lot of reaction to what you were saying.
Yeah, I know, because people are stupid. Nothing I said negates the things that I said before.
That everything that
And
you said
nothing I
over here, I
posted,
think it's great.
nothing I posted negates the things I said today.
Yeah, and I want to with this episode, right? This
Mm.
whole thing. If anybody has the patience to go through all of it, especially the question answer thing that we did in the beginning, I hope that people who watch it can see that in the beginning. And if anybody thought that what if you want to know Armin's views, go on this and listen to this. It's a much better representation of his views than what you might see on Twitter.
Oh no, people who follow me, okay, first of all, nobody who has been following me, my content, would be surprised about anything I said. Okay, I was an anti.
I'm surprised. I follow your content.
No, you don't.
Okay.
You watch my videos?
We mean on atheist? No, I don't watch.
On atheist? Okay.
Yeah.
So you okay? What
I'm talking about Twitter.
I have been an anti-racist activist before I was an atheist activist. Okay, and I was an anti-racist activist in an environment where racism was the norm. And by norm, I don't mean like a lot of people think it's the norm in the United States. No, that's not the kind of norm I'm talking about. I'm talking about a norm in a society where if you do not admit that Arabs are inferior to Aryans, you are seen as a moron, something that is completely like it was rare. It's completely an extraordinary thing. Right now, it's getting better, but in a place where Aryan supremacy was believed by everybody, and I'm saying everybody that I met in that environment, I was an anti-racist activist before I spoke about anything about religion, Islam, God, and all of that stuff. Right? That was my first form of activism, and that form of activism has still continued to today. Right? I have been more abandoned. I say like, oh, people abandon me because of the work. People have left me because of this. That's nothing compared to the people that I lose from the Persian community who have lost me because I called their Aryan supremacy, anti-Arab bullshit on them. Right? It would have been so easy for me. This whole Aryan supremacy, like the anti-Islam narrative in the Persian community, is married to anti-Arab racism. Separating those two from each other is not that easy. It would have been like riding that bandwagon of just focusing on shitting on Islam and not calling out the people who are anti-Arab while being on the anti-Islam bandwagon. What I did? Like the popularity of it would have been so easy for me to grew a much bigger audience if I didn't have this inconvenience of not being racist, right? So people like the people who know what I do and what I stand for and the things that I say would be shocked to even think that some people think that I stand for any racist positions. So if you think like, oh, Armin, well, this was out of context, you're just focusing on this thing and you're not taking the whole picture, you're doing that with me. So go fuck yourself, right? Like you guys are not, you are like, you're doing exactly what you're accusing.
You read your mentions way too much. You just say what you have to say and get it out there.
No, I read them because I don't care. I do care. I love it. It's fine. Like people think like I'm saying, oh, this happens. And like Armin, it's fine. Don't read them. No, I read them because I like it's. I like it. It would be weird. Okay, here's another tip to people. Okay, if people are not coming after you, you're not saying anything worth saying. Okay, if I wake up one day and I don't see in my mentions people that are aggressively attacking my position, I'm going to be like,
What am I doing wrong?
I'm not being as productive as I need to be. Right. Go on.
Especially nowadays. But so okay, so we're going to conclude this. I think we got to go because like it's already we're pretty late. But Armin,
read some questions.
We won't have to. I can't go through too many of them. I want to ask you a question though. So since we agree on most things, you're in support of the Black Lives Matters protests right now. Everything that's going on.
Yes and no. There's a lot of things that they are standing for. That
no, we're talking about the main thrust of it.
There is no main. Show me the main thrust of it. I don't know what the main thrust of it is.
The main thrust is everything that we talked about. Police reform. Okay.
Okay. My understanding is that that's not the main thrust of it. I don't know what the main thrust of it is. Okay. I see a lot of horse shit coming out from people that are considering themselves Black Lives Matter supporters, and I also see some really good suggestions.
That's
okay?
like do you support the atheist movement? Do you support the ex-Muslim movement? You're obviously a big supporter. There's a lot of horse coming out of those movements too. There's horse in every movement.
What I'm saying is that present to me, I don't know if you're the fair person to present to me. Okay, Ali, I don't think the Black Lives Matter movement is a centralized movement yet for it to have a coherent message. Okay. For it to have like a one single message out there. So I'm not going to say if I agree with it or not agree with it, right? But if you want to give me what you think they stand for, okay? I'm not going to, if I agree with it, that's not me saying that's what I think Black Lives Matter stands for, but tell me what you think they stand for, and I'll tell you if I agree with that.
So, that's true. It is decentralized, and there are, there ranges from some people want to smash capitalism. There's all kinds of other sort of views about the police. But the main thrust that I think most of Black Lives Matter people agree on is number one is calling out systemic racism and taking measures to combat systemic racism in the criminal justice system. So criminal justice reform. Now, this is something that even Trump himself has acknowledged and agreed to. The second thing that they're looking at is a radical reform of the policing system, of the way the police treat.
Okay, so
imprisonment. Those are the two main things, and that includes especially the fact that a lot of these cops get away with these shootings and these killings and this brutality. They want that to stop happening.
Okay, so if this
just based on that.
Okay, hold on. So I am highly suspicious that this is all they want, and I'm also highly suspicious that they are using their narratives is based on facts, right? I'm highly suspicious of that, and I'm a lot of the things that me and you agree on. I think a lot of people, them will call out as racist, right?
Yeah.
But if you were right, and if this was the only two things that they were standing for, I support all of that.
These are the three main things. Yes.
No, I don't think you're being fair about what they actually represent. But if that was the main point of all of this, then that's fantastic.
No, there's Armin.
Police reform. Do you agree that the police needs more training?
Of course.
Right. Okay. And mostly on the de-escalation area, right?
Of course, it has to be about de-escalation.
We agree on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there's that, and I think that's the main thing. I fully support. To me, I'm pretty convinced that those are the main things. I know there's other stuff in the in the feminist movement and also in second wave feminism. You had two branches. You had the Gloria Steinem branch. They were trying to petition. They were trying to bring legislative reform, right, and to try and bring more rights for women. That was the enduring thing. Then there were the radical feminist movement that was trying all kinds of other things. Some of them were very, very good, right? Like sexual freedom and all of that. And they made it into the agenda. Others were more sort of fringe, decentralized. So I think that, that's the thing. Susanna's asking, what?
Oh, wait. Sorry.
She's saying, what would you say to people who are ending relationships with family and friends over disagreements regarding BLM? Who is doing the ending? So if it is the people who support BLM doing the ending, I would say just write it out. Let them say whatever they're saying because we're winning. The people who support BLM are winning. There's major corporations, major like football leagues, NASCAR, everybody is finally paying attention to this. 74% of people in the US support the protests, 53% of Republicans, a majority of Republicans support these protests and think that there's systemic racism here. That's a huge amount of progress. So for the people who are in support of BLM, there's no need to just let them write it out. Be content in the fact that, we're going in the right direction, and they'll come around eventually.
Ali, what do you say, Ali? What do you say to all the BLM activists who I invited to come have a friendly conversation with? Not a debate, just a discussion about them telling me what they fight for, and me asking some questions. Like, I'm not going to try to make it to debate. I told them to come to Atheist Republic and to educate me. And to all of them that said no based on the post that I have made, and they don't want to come and have a discussion with me, what would you say to them?
I mean, it's their prerogative. There's a lot of people I don't want to have discussions with.
I didn't say it's not. That's such a cheap way out.
Yeah. I think that they should engage with you. I think that there's people who can learn. I personally, and I know that you're not, we can agree to disagree on this, but I've seen a huge change in you from the last AMA we did to now. And there's a big change in me too. At that time, I hadn't read a lot of the data. Now I've written about like 4,000, 5,000 words on it in the Letters Wiki exchange with Matt Thornton. So I've had to delve into a lot of the data, and I've learned a lot more about it. Okay, so I think that there's been progress, and this happened because of conversation. It happened because of engagement. I've been talking to Matt Thornton. It's because of it. He has a lot of the same, like, he actually doesn't think that systemic racism exists when it comes to police shootings, which you do think that it does. But he doesn't, and I've been engaging with him, and it's been great. So they should engage.
What do you say? What do you say to people? Okay, so here's the thing. There's a lot of people. What is your opinion on this? Some people are like, Armin, stop treating Black people like children. When they say something to you, shut up, let them speak, and just listen. Which to me sounds like a contradiction. Because the way they want you to treat Black people is exactly how you treat children. Do you not? What do you think about that?
It's a context. There are times it's like a relationship, right? When you're in a relationship, there are times when you're sitting down, you're deciding what you want to do, like what school, what kind of education you want your child to have. For that, you have a debate. You go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. There are other times when your spouse is telling you about some experience that they went through, right, having been in their situation, and they just want you to sit and listen, right, and like, just listen to me, hear my story, and that's it. And I can listen and I can disagree and stuff, and there are times that you just
listening does not require not speaking.
I know. You can say that. There are times when people want to have arguments and debates. There are other times they just want to be heard. I think so in those cases, it depends on the context in which what they're saying. They're like, listen, just listen to what their experiences are, then that's fine. If they're saying that, okay, listen to their argument and don't argue back and just accept their argument the way it is, that's bullshit, obviously.
That's bullshit, yes. Well, the context is in the middle of a fucking debate, just to be... That's stupid, right? So, Mars is asking a question.
He's saying, have you guys thought about having Matt Thornton or Chloe Valdari on? Well, sure, we'd love to. The thing is that this podcast, this is kind of an exception. This is usually, we do things that are religion themed. As far as Matt Thornton goes, I am, again, on Letters Wiki. Currently, I've just posted my most latest response now, but I'm having a very sort of thorough exchange with him on this topic. And there are a lot of hyperlinks to a lot of journal articles, a lot of studies there, where I'm making the case that systemic racism does exist. In police shootings, he's trying to show that it's not necessarily systemic racism that exists. But there are some points we agree on, but we actually disagree a lot more than me and Armin disagree. So that's actually worth checking out. Right now, I think it's an exchange of, each letter is 1,000 words, and right now we're up to 9 letters. So there's already 9,000 words to do. I don't know if he'd have the patience to come in and hash it out again in person after all of those points, but let's see.
Skeptical Mantis is saying, Armin, why don't you go to a BLM protest and just ask genuine questions and listen instead of throwing your word salad at them, then upload the videos and try to draw some conclusions? Well, I'm in the Philippines, so I can't go to any BLM protest, but I've tried to do the next best thing. I try to invite BLM people to come and have a discussion with me, but a lot of they seem to be too sensitive, and they don't want to have a conversation with people that unless they are spewing their narratives. So I'm pretty sure not all of them are like this, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to
most of them
find.
I don't think are like that. Hopefully.
Right. So the ones so far I reached out to I think 6 or 7, and as soon as they see my posts, they're like they run away crying. So that has, but I'm pretty sure that doesn't represent all or most of them, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to find some that will be able to have a pleasant conversation with me even if they disagree.
Okay.
But it shows how good faith, Skeptical's Mantis's question is when he's asking you, like, instead of throwing your word salad is. I'm pretty sure I could have better friendly conversation with them than Skeptical Mantis is able to have with anybody, given the framing of his question.
Okay, let's go on. Last one. One more question. One more.
Oh, let me see this.
Coming on to 3 hours.
Donnie. Is this Donnie?
Yeah, Donnie. What did you think of Sam Harris's take on George Floyd's death? What was his take exactly? Can you reiterate it?
I don't. No, I don't remember. I disagree with him, thinking that this whole thing is breaking the fabric of society somewhere. Like I think, like he seemed to be exaggerating. I mean, it seemed like he was like at some points I agreed with him, but some points it seemed to me that he was suggesting like this is something so extraordinary with the way people are misunderstanding data. But like to me I was thinking like, are you like, where have you been, Sam Harris? Like this is like, I mean, this is nothing new. People's understanding of what reality is has always been far off from how things actually are. I mean, that's the part that I remember the most, because I just remember the parts that I disagree with somebody on something.
I think I have to actually talk about this as well. Is that there are two things that I kind of disagree with Sam Harris on in his podcast. The first is this idea of the moral panic, that there's a big moral panic around and everything. And I think he's also sort of disproportionately giving weight to this whole woke thing, which is, again, it's an issue. I think it's on the way down. I don't think it's as big as they're making it out to be. Like this is the center, and it's impossible to have these conversations. I don't think it's impossible. This is not a moral panic. It is actually a very revolutionary moment that is going to bring about change. Things have been worse in the past. Things have been bloodier in the past. People have been assassinated in things like this in the past. They have been more violent. There's been more looting. There was an entire fucking civil war, right? That eventually led to...
things are getting better.
Yeah, things are definitely getting better. These protests are actually
a lot better.
Very tame in comparison. And I think that they're a great thing, and they're already bringing about a lot of change. They're changing hearts and minds. Again, 53% of Republicans are supporting them. So I think it's far from a moral panic and this idea that we can't have any conversations, number one. Number two is, did he and Armin, remind me, I think you heard the whole thing. I wasn't able to finish it all. But did he talk about any other studies aside from the Ronald Fryer paper?
What?
Did he talk about other papers?
Yeah, I don't remember, but he picked the worst one.
So here's the thing: there are about 3 or 4 things.
Oh yeah, that's another problem. Like from all the studies that he could have picked, he picked the one that had the most problems regarding the same point.
Right. So the Ronald Fryer paper, people talk about it all the time. I've seen Coleman Hughes talking. I love Coleman Hughes. I've heard him talk about it. I've heard John McWhorter talk about it.
No, Coleman Hughes actually didn't only point to that one. Coleman Hughes pointed
4 of them. He also pointed
4 of them.
Paper and everything. So the problem with these is that first of all, the Ronald Fryer thing it's not a peer-reviewed paper. It's not like the Ross paper, which is peer-reviewed. It is. The other thing is all the data comes from police shootings. It doesn't come from a combination of media reports. When the Wall Street Journal looked at just
but the other ones do.
Yeah.
The ones Coleman Hughes pointed to do.
Yeah. When the Wall Street Journal just looked at the FBI reports, they found out that 99% of officers are cleared because the shootings seem to be justified. And when the Washington Post looked at not just police reports but police and media reports, that number dropped down to 75%. So it dropped by a quarter. So, and that's assuming that those 75% were justified, and we don't know if they are. So this is
we agreed on this.
Yeah, we do agree on this. So I think that for all of the thing about we have to look at the data. This is going to be very uncomfortable for you to accept, and the kind of things that he was saying. I think that they're being very selective. They have this crowd of people. There's Thomas Sowell and John McWhorter and Glenn Lowry and these sort of conservative Black people that they're listening to, and I feel like they're kind of missing the entire other perspective on this issue that lots of us have been following for many years.
So here's how bad the situation is. Okay, well, not like bad when it comes to always been this bad. It's getting better, but what I noticed from people on one side is that they cherry pick data, okay, the way you mentioned, but the other side is like the Wokistani people. They're like, a lot of them are like, fuck data. Like it's even worse.
Yeah, that's worse. And I'll tell you, I came up with it. I was thinking about some of the kids I used to hang out with when I was a kid, like so that when we had sleepovers, and there were two personalities that were especially annoying, right? And one of them I call the SJW kid, and the other one I call the IDW kid. So the SJW kid is the one that would, anytime you wanted to say something to them, they'd plug their ears and go la 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 la. I don't want to hear anything, and they'd walk away. So that was one thing. Then the IDW kid was when they said, "Oh wait, when you say tonight after midnight, technically that's actually tomorrow." So, aha, I got you there. And I'm like, okay, the first one we would ignore, and the second one we would slap, and both of them deserved it. So this is I think one of the problems with these two sort of very, very selective groups. I mean, neither of them really look at it. They don't look at the situation properly. And to your credit, Armin, I think that you do, even when we disagree. I think that you are. The questions that you asked me in the beginning, I'm actually very impressed. I think that I wasn't expecting that, so I'm surprised.
Oh. Well, now that you want to compliment me, read what Skeptical Mantis is saying. So read the one that I highlighted.
Okay. Hey, okay, this is the last question then?
No, it's not a question. It's just a comment. It's the one that I highlighted.
Armin, they probably didn't want to talk to you because you seem like a troll. For you, it's a big sarcastic joke. For them, fight for survival. So I don't think this applies to Armin at all, but I think that I think this point in general, it is true that when there's somebody who is dealing with a son or a brother or a cousin or a parent who has been killed or who is in jail for smoking marijuana in jail for 20 years or something like that, while white people have gotten a much shorter sentence. For them, it is a matter of
and telling people that resisting arrest and not resisting arrest will give you same results because of your skin color is going to put more people. It's going to reduce people's survivability rate. In fact, in general, if you do not know how to analyze what's in your best interest, is going to cause more victims.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Right.
All right, guys. I think we're going to wrap this up now. It's become quite a bit. Armin, that was really, really fun. I enjoyed it. I think that it turned out a lot better. I know that you kept on pointing out that I was interrupting you, but overall, I think that both of us got to say what
Ali, is to be fair, I know you don't mind it, and I know you actually like it, and I don't mind it when you do it. The only thing I do is because a whole bunch of people seem to be in the live chat. There's a bunch of idiots that just only see one side of things, and I'm just pointing it. I'm not pointing it out to you. I'm pointing it out to them. So.
Yeah. So, guys, that was fun. I'm sorry, I'm actually a little tired right now because it's past 1 a.m. where I am.
Yeah.
And, I am going on a trip to a cottage, undisclosed location for the next 4 days, just to chill and drink and hang out with my kid. So, yeah, that's why So we've been kind of preparing for that all day today. So I'm a little exhausted, but I'm really, really glad we had this conversation. I want to put the link in this description, and I'll send it to you, Armin, to the dialogue that I am having with Matt Thornton. So you can read that. And if you want to, any of the data, I mean, instead of bringing it, because we talked about so many different studies here, there are dozens and dozens of studies that I've linked to there, not just the 3 or 4 that some of my conservative friends told me, but dozens of them. So I'm going to, do check it out. Click on the hyperlinks. delve into it, read about it, come up with your own conclusions. And I'm going to sign off by saying Black Lives Matter.
Yes, I agree. Black lives do matter.
Good. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next month.
Oh, wait. Susanna is saying thank you for modeling how to have a productive conversation about these topics. Thank you, Susanna. That's great. That was very sweet. All right. Bye, guys.
Good night.